Welcome everybody to episode 22 of Real Time. My name is Ryan. With me as always is Robbie. Robbie, how you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you? How you doing?
I'm pretty good. I mean, I'm a bit disappointed I don't have a regular open like I normally do. We could have done mile 22, but I couldn't think of anything clever.
Yeah, and you'd already kind of brought up Jump Street last time when we were talking about 21, so you
yeah,
do 22
so
Jump
I couldn't
Street.
have done that. I mean, I don't know who would be the Mark Wahlberg or the... his name's gone from my mind already. John Malkovich. Thank you. Jinx.
God damn it, not again. The people listening to them on the last episode like that. He already owes them so many times.
Yeah. That actually wasn't that wasn't planned. I did remember literally as you said as well.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I couldn't think of anything funny.
Well,
so.
I think both of us could just grow better mustaches than Mark Wahlberg, and
That's true.
I don't have anything for Malkovich.
And,
Malkovich.
we don't have the cadence.
Malkovich.
Yeah, we don't have a Malkovich cadence the way he talks.
Yeah.
Anyway, we digress. We'll move on. Following up from the last episode, seems common sense finally took place, and Apple has planned to provide the remaining Peanut specials for the year to PBS and provide it for free for a set number of days to all people to watch on Apple TV.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last time in the sense that I knew that they were saying on Apple TV you could watch it for free for a set period of time, but yeah, they finally went, right, we're just going to give it to PBS and they can play them, and so they've been nice enough to keep that tradition going just on another network. And it seemed to please most people from what I saw online, the people who had been previously complaining. As we talked about last time, I was like, it's not really a thing here for us to have these specials. They exist and I've seen them, but they're not like an annual kind of tradition.
It's not a yearly thing. I think the closest for us is probably, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or The Sound of Music.
Kind of like, Charlie and Chocolate Factory is like Easter for some reason.
And then Sound of Music's around Christmas, I think, is played.
Yeah, and then we might have some other, like Home Alone's quite a lot these days, like Christmas and... a couple other things like that, I think.
Yeah, so it's sort of like those bigger movies. Everyone's just like, you watch them at Christmas. So networks here are like, let's put them on. People watch them anyway.
That's the same idea in this case, that they're able to watch it. So it's good that they went ahead. We also we talked about Johnny Depp last time, and we were talking about the rumours that Mads Mikkelsen was going to be the replacement for the role of Grindelwald. And sure enough, within a couple of days after we recorded, it was announced that was the case.
Okay,
So I'm still keen on the idea that they should just recast it every movie, that he's like this constant shape-shifting form. I think that would be a much more intriguing idea. So you have him for this one, and then he become someone else for the next one, and then...
Because I think I touched on this in the last episode, or maybe I said it off here, I can't remember, but it should be similar to Dr. Parnassus, of how it was originally supposed to be Heath Ledger, and then
because he died,
each time it changed, it was like Jude Law, Johnny Depp, and Colin Farrell, and each time he went through a doorway or whatever, he would change, and they could have done the same for that, because I mean... Yeah,
well, because here they've established that he's already changed once per movie, essentially, so at the very least he's going to change again, keep that trend going.
And I mean, like, J.K. Rowling, we won't go there too much, she's writing these, as they sort of go, so... I don't see the harm in changing it again if they haven't really written much about it yet.
Yeah.
Although I think from previous reports I'd already started filming some of it before.
I think
it'd gone to court.
Depp had filmed one scene or something.
Yeah.
So
they're going to have to redo it with Mikkelsen now.
Yeah.
If that's the case.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the case. Speaking of Harry Potter, kind of moving sideways, Alan Rickman, his personal diaries are going to be edited and released as a book. Rickman kept diaries for over 27 years of his career, and sections of this will be used for a book to be released in 2022. I think his widow was very supportive of this idea. Obviously, she's the one that helped release these. It covers pretty much the entire time he was during the Harry Potter era. It basically went up until his death, and the 27 years prior to that, so sometime during the 90s, and it basically was like just personal entries and stuff with the idea, I guess, that maybe eventually he was going to write his own book anyway.
Yeah, it'll probably go from like Die Hard.
I think it's a little bit...
That was like one of his first movies.
Yeah, it was his first. It was his first movie. I think he didn't start doing these diaries until the mid-90s, if that makes sense.
Okay.
27 years. That, so
it'd be 93 at this point.
So about 92, 93, I'm guessing, is when they started. So, so it'd be interesting to see. But yeah, it won't be released until 2022. But I thought it was really cool.
And no doubt Kevin Smith's Dogma will get a call out.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. All the other stuff that Rickman has done over the years, I'm sure will get discussed as well.
Galaxy Quest.
By
Grab Thar's hammer.
I wonder what his comments about Galaxy Quest are going to be about. There's a little bit more
That'd
interesting.
be great. He'd probably get sick of it, like at cons where he's advertised for Harry Potter, but people come up to him by Grabthar's hammer, he'd be like his character.
Our last
Exactly. Yeah. It'd probably be like his character in Galaxy Quest. He just hates doing cons.
I'm sure he wasn't like that. I'm sure he appreciated it. Yeah. I don't know how much he actually managed to do. I don't know if he did many. He probably did do a few. It's just the UK ones, maybe. Be interested to know actually how much he ever did, if he had the chance. Obviously, had he not died and he had slowed down the amount of acting he was doing later in his life, he still definitely could have done it. So it would have been very interesting had he not passed away.
According to Deadline, a reboot of 80s classic Short Circuit is being planned by Spyglass Media, who are currently overseeing the current Scream sequel, with writers Eduardo Cisneros? Sorry if I'm butchering that.
I'm not sure either.
And Jason Schumann on the Short Circuit take.
Yeah, apparently the idea is that they've got a Latino background, and that maybe that would be part of this angle. It hasn't been 100% confirmed, I don't think. The way I read it was like that was perhaps the idea. I'm not sure. I don't know. We've talked about so many times about remaking films. It's like at this point, wouldn't it be just more interesting to tell another interesting take on the same concept and not be a remake or a reboot of an existing franchise? Like we have this constant, you and I have had this conversation over the last couple of years a lot, and it's like, I mean, in a lot of ways, there are other movies that have gone down a very similar route, like Chappie's a perfect example of like kind of similar to Short Circuit, but it's different enough. But it's its own original thing. It does its own things without the baggage of being a remake. Can you not do a funny wise? I guess the opposite. I'm saying this as I'm talking, and I'm thinking, well, the opposite is true probably as well. Because if you put out a movie that wasn't Short Circuit remake, but was like close enough to Short Circuit, everyone was just like, "This is like Short Circuit." Yeah. Why didn't you just call it Short Circuit? So you can't win. You can't win.
No, you're not going to please.
I'm just going to shut up now.
It's all right. We'll move on.
I'm halfway through my conversation. I'm like, start battling with myself in my head. It's like, there's still people out there that moan about it either way. So I shouldn't moan. Whatever. Do your thing. Whatever.
10 Cloverfield Lane director Dan Trachtenberg is set to direct a new Predator film. This will be the first title in the series made under the new ownership by Disney of the former 20th Century Fox, now 20th Century Studios property. The reveal was supposed to be kept quiet, but was revealed by Deadline Hollywood.
Yeah, so Deadline got, I think Trachtenberg ended up putting up a tweet going, well, this was supposed to be a surprise, but I guess it's out in the open now.
Yeah.
And then basically ruining the idea that they've ruined a potential surprise reveal of this thing to happen. So nothing else was detailed. They just basically said this is going ahead. The last Predator movie was the
Shane Black one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which I still haven't seen, admittedly.
Which is okay. It wasn't... It definitely was better. I thought it was better than Predators. But it wasn't still great. There were some good jokes into it. I thought there's also some really self-referential thing. There's like a joke about getting to the chopper and it means some motorcycles or something at one point. And there's some oddly reference. But the idea wasn't bad. It just wasn't great either. So I don't know. This could be good. I liked 10 Cloverfield Lane. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
So it could be right.
Yeah, I think on this too, we don't have it written down in the notes, but I remember hearing something about a potential Predator movie being made and Arnie potentially coming back.
Well, the idea
Dutch as well.
This is a spoiler, so if anyone doesn't want to hear spoilers about the last Predator movie, then please block your ears for the next 30 seconds. At the end of the previous movie, there was a weapon that's provided to the humans that survive that's basically an anti-Predator weapon, and originally it was going to be Schwarzenegger's character. Yeah. That basically he'd been stolen by the Predators because he had won, and then they sent him back to Earth to be their champion. But then Schwarzenegger didn't want to do it, so they turned it into a Predator suit. Basically,
okay.
Yeah. And that's at the end of the last movie, so it still hasn't happened. I think if it was going to happen, Shane Black had the best chance of getting Arnie to do it, even for that one role. But that's the thing. I think it leaves a thing open whether or not this next movie will be directly related to the last one because of that setup at the end, or if it's going to become its own thing. Who knows?
Or if it'll be a useless sort of ending like
AVP
2.
Yeah, dead end.
Where it's like Wayland and Yutani finally come together.
Well, I guess for the AVP universe, they had the weapon.
Yeah, that's right.
For the AVP kind of universe, if you class those as their own thing, it kind of worked. But outside of everything else, it didn't make any sense. But this was kind of for me. I mean, the first AVP pretty much went straight into the next one, for example. Yeah. So there's a chance that they could just go, it's a weaponized suit. It's fine to continue it on into the new one for a reason. They might find a reason, or they might just ignore it entirely and become its own thing. Who knows?
Yeah. Peter Dinklage is cast for the Toxic Avenger reboot film. It's not confirmed if he is playing Melvin / the Toxic Avenger at this stage. Legendary Films is the production company, with Troma Films, Lloyd Kaufman, and Michael Hertz producing.
Yeah, I mean, how much do you know about the Toxic Avenger? Do you know much?
Very little.
Do you remember there was a cartoon series? Do you remember
this? I don't even know that.
Wow, so that's
I
going
think
back.
The only thing I think I know is that he's kind of like the Joker in the fact that he fell into like a giant vat of chemicals.
Yeah,
or
it's
something,
kind of true.
And then he became a superhero or something.
Yeah, he turns into this mutant character.
That's basically all I know.
If you know Troma films, and you probably, this much you should know, Troma makes some pretty like weird and B-grade kind of movies, but lots of, much like the Corman era, a lot of the people that work for Troma have ended up working on bigger productions over time. It's just one of those things. It's a very crass and silly film, and there's a series of them. But somehow it was also in that period where you could take those kind of weird R-rated movies and somehow turn them into kids' entertainment.
Yeah.
And so they turned them into a series called the Toxic Avengers, I think it was. It's Toxic Crusaders, sorry. Oh. It was a TV series. So it was like Toxie and his other mutated friends would be like, they were literally like the Avengers of mutants. Like, for lack of a better term, they were like this team up of like various mutants that's fought bad guys.
Well, I suppose in a way, like, speaking of like R-rated movies turning into cartoons, it's like with Starship Troopers and Roughnecks.
Yeah, and RoboCop when they turned that into a TV series and all these things.
Yeah, that was like a PG TV series.
Yeah, exactly. You turn them into this thing, and it was. So it'd be interesting to see if not only does Legendary take this path of creating a very well produced, kind of like very well budgeted Toxic Avenger film, but if it turns it into like they turn it into a Toxic Crusaders group. They have these other mutants, and that's the setup for like more of these movies. Yeah. It would be absolutely hilarious if they do that, but it'd be very funny. What sort of rating they're wanting for this, what the point is, I don't know, but I'm sure Lloyd Kaufman would have no idea that this was ever going to probably happen. I'm sure he wanted it to happen. Yeah. But for it to actually go ahead is pretty crazy, and to get someone like Dinklage already signed on is probably a good sign in their book. And having a company like Legendary Films, again, same thing, doing the production.
Now, LeBron James has come out and saying the new Space Jam movie isn't a sequel, saying it's called Space Jam: A New Legacy. It's not Space Jam 2, it's Space Jam: A New Legacy.
Yeah. It's very confusing.
Yeah.
He elaborated more, kind of talking about the content to do with like it's like a father-son story underneath it, and he's trying to convince his son to play basketball. And then he alluded to the fact there's like some outer space like aliens involved, but they're not the Monstars, which seems weird to me because that was such an important part of the first movie that people remember. Like, the marketing around outside of the main characters was a lot of, and even now, references are still the Monstars kind of. It's got to be still it's a version of them. So,
because I suppose we're like 25 years after the original. So if you haven't seen it, spoilers. At the end of the original Space Jam, the Monstars remained with the Looney Tunes.
Yeah, they as themselves without their powers.
Yeah, without the powers. So I guess maybe it's a new version from whatever planet
but then
they
it's
come
not,
from.
But remember, it's not a sequel.
I don't know.
LeBron says it's not a sequel. So what is that?
See, there's kind of...
But then the fact this is a new legacy is a mixed message then, because it's new, but it's a legacy, which implies there's something existing. Which something. It's like a Lego sequel, like we've been talking about. So it still has a connected. So maybe it's not a direct sequel, but it's still in the same universe.
Yeah.
So then technically it is a sequel, just not a direct sequel.
Yeah,
but it's still messy. Well, you're just making it worse. LeBron, shut up! Like, you're just making it worse.
What I was going to say is that in some countries you have your subtitle, which is fine, but in other countries you do still have that number, as well, and the subtitle. So then,
for example, was it last year? Was it last year? Or a couple of years ago? It was Zombieland 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Some places it was just called Zombieland Double Tap, and some places it was called Zombieland 2 Double Tap. Just for your audiences to remember that it's a sequel. But I don't know. We'll see what happens when it comes out.
According to Chris Columbus, Donald Trump bullied his way into Home Alone 2 cameo, if you remember that. They had to pay a fee, like most things, to use the lobby of the Plaza Hotel, which Trump owned at the time. However, Trump said the only way that they can use it is if he is in the movie. Which, all right, that's kind of fair, I suppose. And apparently when they screened it for some people, they cheered his cameo, so Chris Columbus decided to keep it in.
It's funny because it's not the first time I've heard this story. Maybe not this version of it, but I've heard from a lot of other, because he turns up in cameos and other things where a Trump property is involved, and he pretty much made that the standard clause. He's like, you can use it, but I have to be in. I want a cameo. Yeah. That was literally it. He wanted a cameo. So there's a whole bunch of other movies and TV shows where they use Trump properties in the 80s and 90s, and he always ended up as being a cameo because of this. I think Home Alone 2 is the most infamous because it works directly into a little bit of the plot, because he's asking where he used to go to check in, I think it is. And Trump says just over there.
Down the hall and to the left.
Oh, is that what he says?
Yeah, something like that.
It's disturbing that you remember this. Not the fact that you've seen Home Alone 2 so many times, but you can go, oh, I know exactly what Trump says.
But it is quite sad. I'm ashamed of myself.
You should see him right now. He does actually look really ashamed right now.
I'm quite dishevelled.
But, there are other examples, and I'd heard other directors and producers talk about this previously, that they're like, oh yeah, we've used these Trump properties, and he always wants a thing. There was a couple where they've said the opposite, which is that, they went and filmed it, and then they intentionally just didn't use it, knowing that they could just turn and say, oh, we had to cut that out.
Yeah.
So there would have been more had that been the case, if it had been like... But I guess in this case, between the fact that people cheered the cameo and it worked for the narrative, for him walking into the hotel and just being told where to go, rather than just being like, oh, where do I go? And then just turning up to the desk, I guess it still worked. So,
I'd be interested to see if Penelope Spheris comes out and sees how they managed to get his the Trump cameo in Little Rascals.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's the little rich kid's father.
Yeah, of course he is.
So
there's probably some reason for it. Yeah, again, maybe Trump property or whatever. But benches, no, actually, that'd be an interesting story.
We might look into that and get back to it. We may not, but
we may
see.
Not. We'll see if we can find it. When I'm listening to this back, I will make myself a note.
Yeah. The Kingsman film franchise is expected to continue beyond both The Kingsman and the third and seemingly final of the Eggsy films, including one following The Statesman's US side, meaning there could be several more films in the series in the future. The production company's head said as much, saying the current plans are 7 more movies plus the planned TV spin-offs that have been previously announced.
Yeah, is it a lot?
Yeah, that's a lot to come out and state.
Like I can understand. There's the Kingsman. I know that they want to do one more of the current trilogy.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that they'll be looking at the idea of doing like a Statesman spin-off. So like a couple more movies, and then maybe there's another sequel to one of the Kingsman things. But this is like talking like almost like 2 more trilogies and the remaining Eggsy movie.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they want to do 3 or 4 more of the Kingsman ones set in the past, and then like maybe 3 Statesman movies, and then like another trilogy of something else.
Yeah.
Related. It's like
there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it seems to be an excessive amount. Plus the TV stuff, obviously.
Like
they previously have talked about.
I wouldn't mind seeing some of the Statesman stuff. I mean, like Channing Tatum was, I think he was a bit bummed that he couldn't be in Kingsman 2, so they kind of...
Too much, yeah.
Too much at least, yeah, so they had to sort of write him out.
Right around him, yeah.
Right around him so he could go off and do whatever it was he was doing at the time.
Yeah, he was signed up for something else. But
yeah, I mean, it looks like he'll return for the Eggsy's third one anyway.
Yeah, because the setup at the end of the spoilers again, the second film's pretty much set up as much. It's they're fun movies.
Yeah,
and I definitely want more of them, but I don't want them to plan out like they're going to stay beyond their welcome kind of. I think saying there's going to be another one of the Eggsy movies, cool, awesome. I think saying maybe wrap that up. Saying the Kingsman, that's still at this stage due early next year. If they say, look, if it does well, we're going to do more of them because it was fun making them and they think it's a good movie. That's cool as well. And I can kind of see the idea of expanding the universe, but it kind of feels like they're running a little bit too fast with this. And now it's like 7 more movies and a TV series or multiple TV series. It's like, again, we've talked about this, like, massive universes. Like, I feel like when they grow,
you want to create too much too quickly.
Yeah, I think
you shoot yourself in the foot.
Exactly. If they grow organically, it kind of feel you plan a certain far ahead, cool, but this far ahead's maybe a bit too much.
If you've got a rough idea of, say, okay, I've got a basic outline of potentially wanting to make 3 movies. If the first one does well, then we might have enough money to make a second, and we could wrap it up and not need a trilogy at all. But if the movies do well and they keep doing well, then you can build on that instead of going, okay, I'm going to the studio, I'm going to pitch a 10-movie series.
Yeah, just
don't do that.
Conversely, I'm okay with, like you said as well, like you do a trilogy and you go, right, this is our plan. We actually have a plan, an arc for 3 movies, and each of them is kind of independent enough of them own, but they also, as a three, they work together as telling a full story. And if you pitch that to a studio and you have that thing, it's kind of like the anti-new Star Wars, where they didn't have really a roadmap of where they're going. If you do the opposite and you have a roadmap, then people enjoy the first one. Of course, they're going to come back for the second and probably the third, because if they're consistent, because you've written them all with a consistency and with an overarching plan, then they tend to work better. I'm okay with that as well. It's just 7 movies seems a bit.
Yeah. Don't go to a studio and go, all right, I want to pitch you 7 movies. Give me monies.
But the production company that does those movies is Marv, and it's the production head of that was the one that said this. I've forgotten to write down his name, but it's
Is
a
it
weird.
Marv?
No, it's not Marv.
What about Harry?
You're gonna say that. That was maybe that should have been the connection to why Trump was in that cameo with Tom Malone. They should have connected those two things together. Production company called Marv. Yeah. Aside from this, though, relevant though, much like The Kingsman, the success of the Extraction film on Netflix has the Russo brothers looking at turning that into a large sequel franchise as well, with multiple sequels planned, including expanding on characters independently of the first movie. So again, perhaps walking before they run, just because it did really well, it did streaming wise. I still don't think the movie was that. Like, on an action level, it was okay, it was good, the cinematography was good, but on a story basis, it was really not an original idea or very, and there's some interesting characters in it, sure, but I'm like, again, maybe just get the next one out and then gauge,
then judge it,
because, the first one might have been the right thing at the right time, because it came out, during a pandemic, when a lot of people were at home and they were looking for something silly and mindless to put on. And if that audience isn't there for the next one or doesn't stick around, do you think they're going to stick around for 7 more of these things? Probably not.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's a walking before you, so running before you walk rather than walking before you run.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of like the Marvel universe. Like if you look at the Marvel movies now, it's like, what are we at? 22?
23.
21? Oh, 23?
Yeah, so it's up
like
to
if they came out...
was it Black Widow is the 24th? Yeah.
I think so, yeah. If they came out, if Jon Favreau went to like Marvel / oh no, they weren't quite Disney then, but if Jon Favreau went to Marvel and said, hey, I want to make Iron Man, and then launch 20 other movies, they would have been like, nah.
They might have had an idea. It might have said, look, eventually if these do well, we want to bring in other characters and we might get a lot of movies made. But there was never any plans to go,
make a full universe.
I think until they were pre-production of the first Avengers film, that they start going, right, well, we're looking at this as a phase.
Yeah.
And we're going to now start planning out a roadmap for other phases. And they're just going to keep going until they stop making good money or they make sense to be making them. And 24 movies later, it hasn't stopped.
No. Well, COVID kind of has.
COVID stopped it this year, but like, they haven't stopped making them.
No, that's true.
And there's still an appetite for them out there.
And as well as the TV series, which are coming as well. Like
exactly.
WandaVision and Hawkeye. Hawkeye and Winter Soldier, Falcon.
Yeah,
as well.
So all these as well. So again, and we've talked about that as well, whether or not that's a viable idea about expanding to a point where the TV series and the movies exist, and if you want the whole story, you kind of want both, and whether or not that audiences will split over the people who are just much more casual about these movies and just kind of check them out when they're on. I don't know. But anyway, again, it's this whole thing about just expanding things way too fast, and we'll see how Extraction franchise, whatever they end up calling it, Extractions, maybe the second one, I don't know, who knows, with the guy who kills people with rakes, who's got the last name Rake. It's still ridiculous to me, I'm sorry. And he kills 2 guys, sorry, correction. I think I've talked about this before, didn't I?
I think so.
When I talked about the review, how ridiculously on the nose it was to have like a guy with the last name Rake kill 2 guys with a rake. It's a bit ridiculous. Anyway,
we'll move on.
Yeah, let's just stop me rambling. Sorry.
Coming to America has been pushed back from December to March the 5th, even though it's going to be launching on Amazon Prime and was now delayed on there also.
Yeah, so the idea was that originally I think it was supposed to come out in December, and then it was sold with the movie issues with COVID. Then it was sold to Amazon Prime, and the intent seemed to be that they were still wanting to release it around the same time. But yeah, now all of a sudden it's been pushed back on Amazon Prime, which I don't know why, because the movie's done. Maybe it's just like there's too much stuff around Christmas. Maybe it's about the with what's going on, which we'll get to later on with HBO. Maybe it's something else, but they've made the decision to put it back to March 5th. Sorry, nothing else really to say. It's when it's coming out.
No.
I will say they're re-releasing the original movie on like 4K and stuff as part of this whole marketing push to get people to see it, I guess, because they may have not seen the original.
Yeah, that makes sense. A film reteaming Channing Tatum with Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who did the Jump Street and Lego movie films, set in the world of Universal's monster movies, is planned.
Yeah, they said it was kind of like I think the idea is that it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of jokey comedy movie, but considering that their history with stuff like Jump Street and the Lego movies is so rooted in like a very core understanding of like what makes these things tick.
Yeah.
And the only thing they haven't managed to finish was the Solo film, which obviously Ron Howard ended up taking over due to disagreements with Disney. I feel it'll be interesting because they know the right buttons of nostalgia to push and kind of what's relevant and kind of be able to turn it and twist it a new version or a new take or an idea on it. Then they make something that was with the Lego movie what could have been a very easy, cheap cash in into something that actually resonated with people on multiple levels, from its comedy to its warmth and heart to its music, and they made it work. So I'd be very interested to see what they can do with the staple of monster movies. My only wish is I hope that they make a joke about the Dark Universe not going ahead somewhere in there about how
that wouldn't
about a
surprise
joke
me.
about trying to reboot monster movies with a famous cast and having it flop. If they do that, then I'm sold.
Yeah, and surely you've got to have Jonah Hill show up at some point.
Probably
as well.
Inside something. Yeah, I can't see that's the case. But yeah. Would you go see that? I think you're the type of person that you're interested in the sort of stuff they put out.
Yeah, I'd probably. Yeah, I'd probably give it a thought, and then I'd probably think about it and go see it. Depending on how it appeals to me.
Yeah,
I mean, like we've talked about this, so like I'm very picky with certain things sometimes. So
he is.
Yeah. But I digress.
I have to trick him into things sometimes.
Not just with movies, but with most things as well. Like TV series, you've got to have a good hook.
Yeah.
First episode, it's got to hook me.
Yeah, that's it.
But
yeah, that's true.
I'm looking at you, Game of Thrones.
I still haven't seen that.
Neither have I. First episode's terrible. It doesn't have a good hook, so I couldn't watch it.
Oh, you watched the first? I haven't even done that.
Well, I haven't even watched all of the first episode, like first half hour, 45 minutes, and I was like, nah, this isn't hooking me. It's not my sort
maybe I
of
should test you with the boys and see if that first episode hooks you like Cobra Kai did. I think it will, but
we'll see. We'll move on. Now we're just rambling.
We are rambling. Yeah, let's continue. We're talking horror movies. Let's move on to another one.
Yeah. According to writer Kevin Williamson, Scream 5 will be called Scream. Yep. That's going to get confusing. Maybe the whole meta element has taken on a new level, like New Nightmare, where the film is about the original film's actors playing versions of themselves or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or something even bigger. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out.
The film has completed its shoot, and Courtney Cox celebrated with a post honouring Wes Craven, as well as thanking Kevin Williamson and the new directors.
I find this very weird. Like, why would you go all of a sudden and just call it Scream a second time?
Yeah.
Unless there's something to it. And the whole movie's always been about kind of poking, a certain thing about the genre. And at this point, obviously, 25 years almost on, 24 years since the first movie, is it about making the relevance of the change in horror genres since then and the movies and kind of going down, the New Nightmare kind of route where it's kind of like, the actors playing versions of themselves from the movie? Or are we going into in the movies already there's an existence of the fact that there's a movie in the universe of the movie about the events that happened in the first movie?
Was it is it Slash or something?
Stab,
that's it.
So, like, how does that play into it or something? I don't know, but I'm very interested. And the directors are the ones that did Ready or Not, which I thought was really good. So I'm very keen to see where this goes. And I don't think until we start seeing the marketing and promotion for the actual film will we get an actual idea of where it's going. But just that title it's got to have a reason for why you would just do that. There's no reason for...
I suppose as long as they don't change the look of Ghostface like the TV series did as well.
No, I think they've
most people will
showing... I think they're showing it because they've been putting up posts for things at times on their Twitter, Instagram.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure at one point they showed a mask and it was the original mask.
Aye.
They also did a one recently where it was like a bloody knife and a pool of blood, and they basically said something with a tweet that said something like, very minimal blood has been spilt on the set, and then it had one of those like, this post has false or misleading claims tags against it.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether I should sort of stand by what I said, I think in the last podcast, or it might have been a couple episodes ago, where it should be like the S should be replaced by the 5. But
They
then
might
people
do
think it's 5 cream.
5 cream.
And they'll think it's like a dairy movie or something. Something about how like cream or chocolate's made or something,
5 ways.
Yeah. I don't know. But like that kind of seems like it would be a smart option. I mean, movies do that. I mean, Too Fast, Too Furious.
7.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or 7 in. Like, how are you supposed to pronounce that in English? Like, if you're learning English, like, how are you supposed to pronounce that?
Yeah. Well, that's but I always like it when people come up with ideas for movies but they never use them, but they're more clever. Like when they were saying that when they did the Now You See Me sequel, it should have been called Now You Don't.
Yeah.
Or someone's been saying if they do a Happy Death Day 3, it should be Happy Death Day Tree, because the character in it's called Tree.
Yeah,
but
that makes sense.
The director said that's not the title.
Well, I mean, like even we've kept saying it for the last 3, 4, 5 episodes, and Universal, feel free to take this and give us money for it.
Fasten your seatbelts.
Jinx, you owe me soda.
No, you can't do that because you set that one up. You can't do that one.
All right, we'll flag that one. We'll move on.
I just wanted it in stereo if both of us saying it at the same time. Right. I thought it was much better if we both put that emphasis on it. Emphasis on the right syllable.
Yeah, we've got to put the right emphasis on the right syllable.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we'll move on. We're getting off track again.
Guy Ritchie's next film we talked about recently, which had the title Five Eyes, has dropped the name but added both Jason Statham, he's got another job,
good for him, another job,
and Aubrey Plaza to its cast with the Staith. The Staith, really?
The Stath.
Is that what we're calling him?
Is
that his nickname?
I just wrote it down.
All right.
The Stath.
With the Staith playing an MI6 operative forced into working with Plaza's CIA tech expert.
There's nothing else to say other than what you just written. Read out so that I've written. Yeah. I don't know. I just thought I was like, I don't know what else to say. Like, it's just with Statham playing. I was just like, I say this all the time. Let's do something different with it. I'm sorry it offended your sensibilities.
Well, no, it's just like it threw me off. I was like, it's all right.
He's got a job. It's all that matters. He's got a job.
Yeah.
He's on the job.
It sounds like he could be the Bond.
He could be the Bond.
He could
be the
Stath. Lead into the Bond.
The Stath. The Bond. The Bond. He's an MI6 operative. Yeah.
The name's Statham. Jason Statham. Please don't hurt us, Jason Statham.
I'm on the job. I'm on the job.
Please don't hurt us.
I'm on the Stath and I'm on the job.
Yeah. Please don't transport us in the boot of your car.
Or feed us to a giant shark.
Yeah.
What
a twist.
What a twist. With a bomb. We'll move on. Yeah. Ryan Reynolds shared 2 pictures of the shoot for his next movie, The Adam Project, for Netflix. We also talked about this recently because we talked about how many Netflix movies he seems to be making. And I like this. In typical Reynolds form, he noted in the post, in addition to taking these 2 photos, Netflix will be happy to know we also shot some of the film.
Yeah, it sounds very Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was very good. The photos didn't show much. There was a photo of him. So the character in the movie is somehow, I think, time travel or something. He's with a younger version of himself. So it was him with the actor that's playing the younger version of himself. Mm-hmm. And then there was just a photo of him with the director. God, what's his name? Sean Levy.
Yeah, I think it is Sean Levy.
Yeah. It is. You're all right. Which who he's worked with a couple of times before, so it was just about working with him. But yeah, I did like the typical Ryan Reynolds comment. I mean, it's got to the point where it is atypical. If he doesn't make some sort of comic like this, what sort of post does he make it?
Yeah, people will think he's sick or something.
Something's gone wrong if he doesn't make some sort of sarcastic comment.
Yeah. But I mean, like we've talked about that before. Like Ryan Reynolds is the living embodiment of Deadpool.
Yeah, or Deadpool is the living embodiment of Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, that's meta. That's very meta.
No, I'm going to stop now.
Yeah. We'll move on. We'll move on to the science community world. The 1,000-foot wide Arecibo, I'm assuming. I've never heard that called. Yeah. Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico is to be demolished, sadly. It was used in movies such as GoldenEye and Contact, among others, and TV shows.
2 shows?
And yeah,
TV shows. Yeah,
TV shows. I read that correctly, even though it's
I didn't know
noted wrong.
Like 2 shows.
Now, an update to that: it has now collapsed in on itself, as engineers had feared, due to cables splintering, making it unsafe.
Yeah, I asked you, had you seen the footage, and you said yes, I have. There was footage of the whole thing. It's amazing. If people
I think
were
they
listening,
timed it right.
Yeah, if people are listening, have a look. So there's a guy who set up a GoPro.
I think it was on like one of the main support structures by the looks of it.
Yeah, I think there's a little platform thing for checking from the distance, and it was an anchoring station, but it was also had this little viewing platform, and I think he attached it to that. How it was connected to constantly record, but he managed to record the entire thing collapsing, and someone just happened to be flying a drone past, looking at the exact weakest point at the time it snapped too.
Yeah,
so
they happened
to get the point at which the two of the three main cables that were remaining on this tower snapped. It's amazing footage. It's a shame there wasn't a second drone almost looking at the main platform at the same time, because you only just missed a bit of that landing, because they turned the drone very sensibly turning it to see what's happened. But it's amazing footage. Anyone listening should check it out. It's not very hard to find. You just have to search for it. But
and I mean, fortunately, there was no Sean Bean involved, and it wasn't for England.
You mentioned this to me, and I'm like, you know what? It's a real miss. It is. It's totally not true that Sean Bean dies in most movies. I think I read this.
He dies a lot.
No, he doesn't even die that a lot for most people. For some reason, he's just got this stigma. It's one of those things where like things get a stigma attached to them. Like, another one which I love bringing up with people is the fact like people like, okay, so if I mention Superman to you, right? Where does Superman, when Superman's Clark Kent and he goes to get changed into Superman, where does he get changed?
Traditionally, a phone box.
No, he doesn't. Historically, he doesn't.
Yeah.
It's just become the thing that people associate with that, but it's not true at all. He's very rarely in media has he ever changed in a phone box.
Yeah. He did it like once or twice.
And it just became a thing. Like he did it in the movie, and it's when something takes over in popular culture. There's something. What's the one that the Simpsons? There's something that the Simpsons did as well in the early '90s that became like the standard for something, and because the Simpsons referenced it, even though it wasn't true as well, I've forgotten what it is. But there's a bunch of these. So yeah, he doesn't die in that many movies, and I think we've seen a list of the ones where people actually the highest number of deaths for an actor. He doesn't even rate in the top 20. But for some reason, he's just like, it's not a good movie unless Sean Bean dies in it.
Yeah,
or seemingly twice, because like Goldeneye, perfect example. He seems like he gets killed at the start of the movie. It turns out he wasn't, and then he dies actually at the end. Yeah. Spoilers, by the way.
And you could rifle off like a couple other movies where he dies as well, like
there's plenty.
Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings.
There's plenty where he actually does die, for sure. There's no question about that. But I think if you looked at his entire filmography, I'm assuming there's probably like 100 movies. It's probably like 20.
Yeah, where he actually does die, and people are like, oh, okay.
But maybe it's just he's memorable at dying.
Maybe he's just a good dyer.
He's good at being killed.
Yeah,
and the ways he's killed. Because I know, like, obviously you've got like stuff like Lord of the Rings, but watch movies. There's one where he gets like pulled apart on horses or something, and like,
isn't that Braveheart?
But it's similar to Braveheart, but it's but with him, like he gets like pulled apart. And there's another one where like there's times where he gets like killed and like very like explosives or sliced in half or something.
Well, because in Game of Thrones he gets his head cut off. I know that.
This is what I mean. And the things like this stick in people's memories, and there's like, he's really good at getting killed a lot, even though he doesn't get killed a lot. But they just think he does. I don't know. Well, again,
we're going on.
Let's just move.
Yeah, we've got to stop doing this. Mysterious monoliths have been appearing around the world recently. There's been one in Arizona, then Romania, and now California, which has since disappeared, and now a new one has appeared in front of a candy store in Pittsburgh. Although this one is self-admittedly, by the owner of the shop, self-commissioned, made of a triangular piece of plywood with some sheet metal on it to drive up candy sales. And now one has also popped up on the Isle of Wight in the UK.
Yeah, no, I'm getting the feeling that like the first one was a thing, and the rest of these are just people copying. Across the board.
Yeah, the first one that popped up was in the middle of the desert in Arizona, in like some really obscure hiking trail which someone found.
Yeah, and then it disappeared.
Yeah, it's and apart from the candy store one, no one seems to know whether they're all connected or whether it's people just copying the first one.
I think people just copying. My personal guess is it's just people copying. After the first one, people just copied the idea and just started putting them in different places. To make it seem like someone's putting them in different places. But but I mean, obviously, putting it, the one that's in the first one that appeared is very 2001.
Yeah, Space Oddity, for sure.
It's kind of
just appears randomly. No one knows how
and
it got
it's just
there
kind of there, and it was in
disappeared.
a deserty kind of like it looked like similar to the thing in 2001. And so I can kind of see the idea there. But yeah, beyond that.
Yeah,
I was saying to you as well, it reminds me of, like, I think it's just going to end up being some sort of weird, if it's not for the first one, if it ends up being that they're all connected for some reason, or most of them, obviously, it's going to end up being some sort of weird thing, kind of like that Simpsons episode, to go back to the Simpsons again, but where Lisa the skeptic, where there's the angel that they dig up, and
That's
Homer
right,
like markets around with it, and it ends up being it's just for like promotion for a, what is it?
For the opening of the Mega Mall.
Mega Mall, that's what it is, yeah.
Because I think like the land was nearby or something, but overnight they'd put like the skeleton in there for the kids to find the next day or something.
Yeah.
Because they'd started sort of digging for like a heritage site or something.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
That's what it was. So the mall's like, oh, how can we jump on this? Let's throw a skeleton in.
So a fake skeleton angel in there. That's right.
But
the hold low prices or
yeah, something like that. So I think I read somewhere that it's probably going to end up being something for like Monolith energy drink or something, you know, like something really obscure.
The thing is, even if it's not, like you could imagine if there's something like that, someone would just jump on board it and just say, oh yeah, we did it because, you know, we were promoting our brand that we just launched. Whatever.
But I don't know. I guess watch this space. I mean, who knows? And behind that, there's also a giant wooden penis that has appeared in Germany as well.
Well, it didn't
appeared
appear.
and then disappeared.
It didn't appear. It's been there for years.
Oh,
it's been there for like
been
there for like 6 or 7 years. But it did originally. It randomly appeared. It just was it wasn't there, and then one day it was there, and then it became a bit of a tourist hotspot because people would hike up this mountain just to see it, and then just as quickly, in the same sense that it appeared, but several years later, just one night it just was cut down, and the base of it was left, and it disappeared, and nobody knows who did it. Again, weird. Like why?
I mean, like, if these, like, monoliths are, like, art installations, then sure, they should be left there, and if people are pulling them away, the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Like, if someone is putting them there for a purpose, then they should come out and say that.
Yeah.
But
I don't have anything else I can say. Yeah. What I will say is I'm going to be very interested to see if you can connect this to the next thing.
Yep. Actually, no, I can. Because we talked about... Oh, no, actually,
no, you
I
have
can't.
to connect it to a giant wooden penis.
No, I don't think I can. There's no way for this.
No, speaking of one phallic object to another phallic-looking object, no, not at all. It's a giant shark.
Yeah. Okay. No, I got nothing, but we'll move on anyway. The original animatronic shark for Jaws, named Bruce, after Spielberg's lawyer at the time, has been restored and hung up at the soon-to-be-opened Academy Museum of Motion Pictures. The restoration has been done by K&B Effects.
Yeah, so Greg Nicotero is the guy, I think he's one of the co-founders or co-operators of K&B. He's the guy that does like all the stuff for The Walking Dead. K&B's done a lot of work over the years for a lot of movies. So they took the original frame and what was left and restored it, and they've gone and put it up in this museum, which is open next year, which will be very cool to visit. It's the one that's be near the Oscar Theatre thing. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, they'll have a whole bunch of stuff in there from stuff. I remember years ago Spielberg had talked about the idea that he had the only surviving sled of Rosebud that was left, because they made 3 and they burned 2 to get the take, and then he was happy with the second take, so they never burned the third one. And so I won't be surprised if that's in there as well, because obviously he said I want to put that in a museum when it becomes an option. And there's all sorts of other planned stuff to go in there that isn't already in the Smithsonian. So
yeah, my question to that is well, 2 questions actually. One is, how are they going to hang it? Are they going to hang it from like the tail, like someone's just caught it?
No, it's hanging. I've seen the photo. It's already hanging. It's anchored in 2 spots, I think.
Oh, okay, so it's like one of those novelty talking fish.
But it's hanging from the ceiling. So
okay. I see. So it's still
up on the ceiling, so you can walk around underneath it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not. Yeah, it's not turn to you and go, "Hi, I'm Bruce, and I was in Jaws."
Exactly. That's more what I mean. Like one of those.
I say this with complete no lack of irony of the t-shirt I'm wearing.
Shirt, yeah.
I'm wearing a shirt with Jaws right now.
My second question is it still going to look fake?
I don't know, Ryan. You'll have to tell me. Sorry, I just made the Jaws on my t-shirt talk.
Grow up, man. You're 30.
What are you talking about? Growing up. I'm a shark. I've broken it now.
Deal with this.
It reminds me of when you were kids, you'd have animals in your
t-shirts. Yeah, you need to do that, yeah.
That's where I go.
Carry on, weirdo.
So what was the actual question? Sorry?
Whether the shark's still going to look fake. a la Back to the Future.
I think it probably still looks about as fake as it always ever did.
Yeah.
The photos online, you can actually look it up. They've taken photos specifically to announce that they've hung it up, and it was kind of a semi. They had an event for putting it, the restoration, putting it up. So, yeah. You continue.
Yeah, all right. Hayley Atwell has shared a photo of her sitting in the driver's seat of a rigged up car with Tom Cruise for the next Mission Impossible shoot. Later, some videos people shot of the car shoot in Rome made their way online, as always. The filming in Italy has since concluded, and the film continues on its way back to the UK to continue shooting.
Yeah, so the car looked like it was like either like a V-dub or a very like a kind of a very Pinto-y Fiat kind of thing, and it was being flung around these corners with all this heavy camera gear and railing and rigging on it. Yet it was just like squeaking around corners and like almost tipping in some ways. Like I'm assuming it was Cruise or her, one of them driving it.
Yeah,
but it was pretty damn impressive.
I'd say more likely Cruise.
Yeah, but it was pretty good. Like the footage is online if you check it out. It's just like maybe 10 or 15 seconds of this car going around a corner, almost coming to a complete stop, and then taking off, and then screeching at another right hand turn.
It almost seems like they need like the Bay Buster for some of these sometimes to get like those real, close in shots.
Oh, I mean, this thing was rigged up with a whole bunch of camera equipment, and obviously if they need to do multiple takes with different gear where they can't see out of a particular window. So this gear was all it looked like it was framed from back, left side of the vehicle, and front, so that they're getting shots looking towards the right. But obviously, if then they want to do it again, but looking the opposite way, if there's multiple people in the car, they'll have to rig the car the opposite direction and then do the exact same
thing again.
Route again. Yeah. So yeah, be interested to see what the outcome is. But yeah, check out the video if you can. It's very funny. But yeah, and the photo is really good. It's just like I made a comment about like her number one stunt driving teacher, and he's sitting in the seat.
Yeah.
Whether he actually taught her stuff or not is to be debated. But the fact that he's sitting there is pretty funny.
Yeah. Now, 2020 has had some downs for this year with like COVID delays for movies and various other things going on, just COVID in general.
Yeah.
But one good thing to come out of this year is that we talked previously in a past episode about Rick Moranis getting attacked in New York.
Yes.
His attacker has now been found and arrested.
Yeah, it turned out that apparently...
Thank God for that.
Did I read this correctly? You can correct me if I'm wrong. But it turned out that this guy has gone around previously and sucker punched other people. Is this what I read? I heard that he's like known as attacking... I didn't read this,
so I think you were on your own on this
Okay,
one.
I think I read somewhere that this guy has a history of randomly attacking people in the past.
Oh, wow.
So, in this case, it just happened he attacked the wrong person, but like he shouldn't be attacking anyone, obviously. But like the fact that he did this, they ended up finding out who he was eventually. I don't know if he ended up attacking anyone else, and that's how he got caught. I don't know. But as you said correctly, he's been arrested. So.
Yeah, and some good news, I mean, especially for Rick Moranis. I mean... He doesn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that.
Nobody deserves that.
No.
But
especially Rick Moranis. He's a Canadian treasure.
It's true.
Damn you, Ryan Reynolds. You should have known better. Subject Rick Moranis to 2020.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Now, Elliot Page has come out and said that they are transgender.
Yes,
we
were
talking about that for a second.
Yeah, we were talking about the pronoun thing. So for framing, just because we're doing this as an audio thing, Elliot Page used to be Alan Page. Yep.
The likes of Juno and Hard Candy
and so
X-Men.
forth. X-Men, yeah. And they're now Elliot Page, which is very obviously it has had an interesting response online, which has actually been really positive. Which is great. It's actually really cool to see.
Yeah, that's what you want.
The other thing, obviously, people are questioning is that Page has been playing this role in Umbrella. What's it? Umbrella
Academy.
Thank you. The word was not coming to me. On Netflix, they will continue to play the same role.
Yeah.
On that front, nothing has changed. I think in this sense, they would continue to take roles that they see suitable for the acting abilities, and if people cast them appropriately, then they can just do the role. It changes a certain thing when you look back at their previous work, only because they're in such a public view, so you have to take that on face value. So it's very interesting to see something that's like Juno, where it's like a pregnancy and all that sort of stuff. It's very interesting to see how that's taken. But this is obviously a continuing step of their life that they want to go to and be very upfront and public about it. So the fact that it's been taken so well publicly has been really good to see. Because you could easily see so many people creating a backlash over it.
Yeah, and I think some people have sort of rightly, well, not really rightly, but they've kind of curiously asked the fact of whether you'd still talk about Ellen Page in the past of her doing all of those movies as opposed to now. But I think someone else had sort of not really shot it down, but sort of commented in what I think is the right way, is that until they come out and say what they want the pronouns to be for the past, then just announce it as, or just sort of refer it to as what they are known as now.
Yeah. So it was Juno with Elliot Page.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's how my understanding of the situation as well for people. It's interesting because like I have no problems that, and people will make mistakes, and that's perfectly fine, and there's no reason for people to get upset. But obviously, there's a difference between making an honest mistake and being vindictive or malicious with your comments. So, as I said, it's really good to see this sort of response. Funny enough, we'll move sideways. Elliot Page has been in a video game before, and I wanted to bring this up because we don't normally cover like actual video game news. We kind of talk about video game movies.
Yeah,
and there's
really
a few
video games as such.
There's a few to talk about. There's something that came up that I really wanted to talk about, which was really interesting, which is the company that makes the series Hitman, IO Interactive, is working on a video game currently codenamed Project 007. Based, as you may guess, in the James Bond universe. The interesting thing for this is that this is the first time in a long time, if ever, I was trying to think about this, that a Bond game won't be based on an existing Bond actor, film, or tied into some crossover project. So there have been original Bond movie games, also Bond games where they've used the likeness of existing actor, be it Pierce Brosnan or Daniel Craig. And so they've been original stories, but they've been based off that. Or they've had these ones where they've taken a previous movie and turned it into a game, or it's been a tie-in. But I couldn't think of anywhere there was an entirely original looking Bond with an original take on the material. So the fact that they're doing this would be very interesting. And so rather than being, as I said, a crossover, it's an original title that explains Bond's origins of getting his 00 status. It's possible that this was planned to fill the gap between the end of Daniel Craig's Bond era and whoever steps into the shoes for the next film franchise, which to me makes sense. Like if the production companies are wanting to do that, then that's a really sensible way to kind of, if there's going to be a few years gap, all of a sudden you've got like this new Bond video game. You can go, you want some more Bonds? Here it is. You can play this game, or you can watch someone else play the game. It's very cinematic and so forth. They haven't said anything other than put out a little teaser trailer for them announcing the project. So we'll see what happens. They've still got their next Hitman game due out, I think, in about a month or so's time. So obviously the focus is probably to finish that properly. But then it sounds like this is the next project the company wants to work on for the new generation of consoles and PC and so forth.
That'd be interesting because I mean, like we've talked previously about who's potentially going to take up the 007 name after Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
So whether they sort of abandon it for a few years and go down this route with video games would be interesting.
The thing with this as well is that we're in this era, as you know, that they cast these actors that actually perform motion capture as well as doing the voice. And quite often, like these days, they put the likeness of these people around them. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do. So we're very interested if they end up being able to cast someone for their likeness or their personality or who it is for Bond that ends up being in this, and what that means for future. We may end up having with a series of games with a video game Bond, who's this one particular actor who does 3 or 4 or 5 games for the future, while at the same time you have a movie Bond, who's the new Bond movie, who makes the next 5 Bond films or something like that, 3, 4, 5 Bond films. So it'd be very interesting to see them almost split it down this way, but it almost seems like this was always going to happen eventually, the way that the technology's gone. So I thought this was very interesting to bring up because essentially you're splitting the idea of having a Bond for gaming and a Bond for movies.
Yeah,
like there's a Bond for books and there's...
Yeah, well, I mean, like, we've sort of talked about the games before of how there's just the game tie-ins to the movies, but I think Bond is probably one of those franchises that probably deserved its own sort of game universe, I guess. Like, there's definitely a market out there. Like, yes, there's your older generations who grew up with, like, your Connerys and your Roger Moore and all that, who will be like, video game,
yeah, and they could still go watch the
people
movies.
like our age now that still enjoy the Bonds, or younger that would be like, oh yeah, Bond game might be all right.
And especially if it's done well,
Yeah, and I mean, if it's done by the Hitman creators as well, then
they've got an idea about espionage and like stealth.
They've got a good idea of what they're doing with that sort of game.
I think so as well. It's funny, I was just saying we don't talk a lot of video games, but actually I've got a really large amount of video game news. Some of them are follow-ups from previous episodes, some of them are new. So it's almost like this little video game section I've inadvertently put together here. So I'm going to go through these, and I'll go through this live and just talk to you and get your feedback, because I think it's better than me just making up rambling words again. So we'll start with Sonic the Hedgehog director Jeff Fowler is now to direct a new Pink Panther movie. So this isn't directly for video game related, but I thought I'd tie this in to begin with just to get it with. But it's not one with just the detective, the bumbling Detective
Clouseau?
yes, correctly. But actually, the actual Panther character is both somehow involved. So the Pink Panther.
Okay.
So it's this hybrid thing going on, like Sonic the Hedgehog was with, like, Sonic and...
Well, maybe he'll be like the new Clouseau or something, or he'll have elements of a Clouseau.
Well, there's apparently still the detective, so there's still Clouseau,
okay.
but there's also the Pink Panther. It's like a buddy thing going on. I don't know how this is going to work. I'm sure they've got some crazy idea, but it's very much... The reason I'm trying this, obviously being the Sonic Hedgehog director, and very much in the vein of that movie where you had, like, and I guess, like, stuff fun enough with James Marsden, like Hop and stuff, where it's like live action with a CG character. Speaking of Sonic the Hedgehog, however, the film sequel was to begin shooting in between March and May of 2021 for a planned April 2022 release. No one has yet confirmed which of the actors from the original return, so we don't know if Jim Carrey's back, if James Marsden's back, and if Ben Schwartzman, is it Schwartz? God, I've forgotten. The guy that does the voice of Sonic.
I think so, yeah. We'll go with that. I can't remember.
Yeah, someone's going to be like, it's Ben, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. No, it's Ben something.
It might not even be Ben.
It is Ben. I know it's Ben. I know it's Ben. I'm 99.9% confident it's Ben something.
Okay. I can't even remember.
But anyway, so yeah, you still haven't seen the original Sonic.
No, I haven't.
I think you'd like it because it's very... You've got classic Carrey in there.
Yeah.
And there's a scene that everyone, as like people listening, is one of the standout scenes of movies this year, where he is in full classic Jim Carrey mode, and they just obviously just went, you just ad-lib what you want to do.
You just carry.
Yeah, you just carry. Yeah, you just carry the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
They've literally just given the direction, which is that you are in the space and you have to do this. You do it whatever way you want to do, and he chose the way that he does it in the movie, and it is very funny and it's very classically him. Yeah. But the whole movie, in a lot of ways, is very much like him as well. So we should get you to watch that too. Put it on the list. Put it on the extendedly long list.
Yeah. Never-ending list.
Yes. We talked about this previously, that HBO was planning to make a Last of Us TV series. They've now fully greenlit that. When production is to begin is not yet noted, but most expect it will begin early in the new year, because that would make sense. The co-creator of the game, who's also co-writing, has just been made co-director of Naughty Dog, which is the company that makes the games. Wow. So it's interesting. He still says he's going to stay on as a writing and creative role, as well as being the co-director, which is normal for the company because they've had previous directors or co-directors of the company still work on games in that capacity. But obviously he's also being stretched over to kind of help write and guide this as a producer as well, so he'll be splitting his time between that and whatever the studio's doing, so it's very interesting to see. I still think this has, with the pedigree and the hype, I think this has got a lot of potential to either be really, really good or really, really disappointing to a lot of people, so we'll see. According to Deadline, moving on, Oscar Isaacs has been added to the cast of Jordan Vogt-Roberts' long in pre-production Metal Gear Solid film based on the video game franchise. Isaac has been added as the main character, Solid Snake. I can totally see this casting, it makes sense. Yep. The film was actually officially announced with Vogt-Roberts attached back in 2014, so it's been 6 years. I didn't even realise it had been that long. I thought it was like 2017. 2014!
That's a long time.
And it finally seems to be going ahead with a script from Jurassic World writer Derek Connolly. Sony Pictures is the production company behind it, so I guess the idea is that if they're casting for it, they've probably got a good chance that they're wanting to go ahead with it within the next year. I mean, it could still fall over, because sometimes that happens, but it's been 6 years and they're still making it. The same director's still attached, so obviously it's a passion project.
Yeah, it seems like it.
He's made that abundantly clear online too. So
it's kind of like James Cameron with Avatar. I mean, he's been waiting 20, 30 years for that.
I think when he first made the first one, he'd been waiting 15 or so years for the technology to catch up to the point, and now to make the sequels, it's by the time the last one's come out, it's going to be 20 years almost. Yeah. Two more bits of video game related news. Monster Hunter, our favourite looking Resident Evil movie, has been pulled from Chinese theaters after a backlash from a terrible joke that's been deemed racist. Mm-hmm. The joke comes from an Asian actor. He makes a comment about his knees being Chinese. It obviously, on the surface, when you hear it that way, it doesn't sound that bad because you go, it's a Chinese actor. But when you put the context that there's previous historical racist jokes about that, especially with the Chinese audience, plus the fact apparently the subtitles for the Chinese language don't match what he says. It's all led to this backlash. I think what I read was that the movie was like on 97% of all screens on its first day. Oh, wow. And within like a day, it was like less than 1%. Like wow. So within 2 days, it was gone.
Insane.
A re-edited version of the joke removed has still been refused to be allowed due to the impact of the original version, as far as I've last heard. The movie will have the joke removed from all other international releases because it was released in China first. And the actor and the director, Paul W.S. Anderson, have both posted apologies. So does Mila Jovovich as well, who's the main actress in it, saying that they didn't realise the history of this insensitive... It's a World War II era joke. It's
quite an old one.
It was a comment towards, especially the Japanese at the time, but also just Asians in general.
Yeah.
And they had no awareness, being that they were British. That was American, kind of more of an American joke. So they and just the general offence, obviously, it's also caused in China. So not a particularly great look.
No.
Speaking of Paul W.S. Anderson, the last bit of video game news. Not his Resident Evil movie, but the new version that's not him related at all, and doesn't have him or Mila Jovovich involved. But according to the production company Constantine Films, the new Resident Evil movie is currently planned to arrive on September 9th, 2021. I've seen lots of photos. I'm still connected to my previous life in the Resident Evil community.
Yeah.
And I see lots of photos about the sets and actors and stuff. It sounds, in a lot of ways, stuff that people were probably wanting to see for a long time, references and faithful recreations of events and locations from the first two video games from years ago, plus the remakes that have happened. But whether or not it's going to be a good movie will be yet to be seen. But I'm quietly positive to see some of this actually appear in a movie, because I've talked time and time again about how most video games don't really, they pay very basic lip service to the origins of their games and don't really follow much of a narrative from them.
No, it's just the only main thing they really share is the name and not really
or a gimmick
theme or
like a first person shooter segment in Doom or whatever.
Yeah.
So this is the first time I've seen a movie for a long time where I've seen a lot of what's being shown on these people sneaking photos of sets and stuff, and actors releasing kind of little hints that actually seems quite tied into its source material, which is quite interesting. So we'll see. But yeah, that's all the video game related things that all just came out in one again, like we had a couple of months ago. Just a whole bunch all came out at once, and I just thought they're all relatively worth mentioning. So I'll let you continue on.
Yeah, that's all right. Rumors are that Disney is considering more streaming releases for Disney Plus. Some of the rumored considerations, mostly the live action titles, include Cruella, Pinocchio, Peter Pan, and Wendy, although nothing has yet been confirmed.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything more about this. It came out quite early, just after we recorded our last episode, and obviously a lot of these haven't been dated, but with what we'll talk about later in regards to Warner Brothers, it'd be very interesting to see what sort of Disney does, especially with the potential backlash of cinema releases to Disney Plus releases, and also what happened with Mulan, which I don't know how successful that was or not. Mulan is now available for everyone to watch on Disney Plus
and on Blu-ray and digital everywhere else.
But yeah,
I say I'm not surprised. I mean, Disney are doing, all of their old animated movies live action. Well, apart from Lion King, if you want to go that way,
kind of live action,
live-ish action movies now.
Realistic.
So, I mean, you might as well go this way.
I think as a better audience, if you're going to put all these movies... I mean, all those movies are being produced. We know this. Cruella's being shot. It's got Emma Stone playing Cruella de Vil. Pinocchio's the Robert Zemeckis one. Peter Pan and Wendy, I think, still has to be shot. I think that's the only one of the three that hasn't actually had some of the shoot done or is about to shoot. I mean... There's nothing wrong with them, again, but we've talked about this before, whether or not... If they're original takes on... Like, Cruella makes sense in some ways because it seems like it's taking a character from the animated thing and turning another version to, like, maybe their origin story or something that's different. I'm a little bit more okay with that than something that's like Lion King or Pinocchio is going to be, or Dumbo, where it's a reimagined but more or less straight up retelling of the events. And even Mulan, like, the things that they did differently, I didn't like all of them, but at least it was different enough, I guess, on the surface level. It wasn't, for me, a good movie, but at least it tried.
Yeah.
Whereas Lion King, was straight up pretty much the same movie.
Almost shot for shot, basically.
But not as enjoyable. Yeah. And it's like the least favourite thing I've ever seen John Favreau make, so,
I suppose, in a way, like, looking at Cruella, it probably will be like a prequel, perhaps. Because, like, we've already had, like, we've had 101 Dalmatians and 102 Dalmatians live-action movies.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They've actually done... The irony
that was some 20-odd years ago
we keep forgetting that, like, this whole live-action movie thing is not new in some respects because Yeah, they made 2 live-action Dalmatian movies 20-odd years ago with Glenn Close. So is Cruella, which was great casting. She's actually really good in those, and they're actually not bad movies. But it's the purpose of doing them and whether or not they're good versions. I think once in a while doing one of them wasn't so bad, and that was kind of good. But now Disney's plan is just let's just make all of them. Let's do Aladdin. Let's do this. Let's do Pinocchio. We've done Dumbo. We're gonna do Peter Pan. We're gonna do this, that, and the other. And they're gonna run out of movies eventually. But
they've got to get through them somehow. How I say, give it 20 years, there'll be a live action Frozen.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah. Disney pass money for that idea. Universal Disney pass money.
I don't think they can.
Hey, we're pitching them that idea.
I don't think we can say we pitched them that idea because they're kind of already doing that. But I love your style. I love your muxy, kid.
Yeah, but maybe they just wanted to keep making animated movies, and we're like, no, make Frozen live action. See, we're pitching them that idea, so they give us money.
Sure, we'll go
with that.
Yeah, it's like your chicken with pickles.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, McChickle.
Yeah, McChickle.
McChickle.
Yeah,
but then because you added the Mick, does that automatically mean that McDonald's thing can claim that you should just be calling it the Chickle Burger? Because if you add the Mick bit to it, then they can claim that that's part of their trademark. I think we should just call it the Chickle.
Yeah, but that implies you can get it anywhere.
Yeah, but then you pitch it to McDonald's, and then they can add the Mick to it. You just call it the Chickle, and then if they want to keep it, they call it the McChickle.
But what if I want them to call it the McChickle? Because I already call it the McChickle, and then they'd already put Mick on front of it.
They're not going to do that. That's just too complicated. They're not going to call it the McChickle.
Well, they're not going to take my idea either, so... Pay me money, McDonald's.
To explain this, so we've gone to this rambling thing with no reason. Ryan adds pickles to his McChicken burgers and thinks that this is an original idea. So because they copied another thing he used to do, he's worried that they're going to eventually steal this. They're going to steal this, and he's going to be like, I missed out on money because I came up with it first. So I told him to post it on social media, and he has. And you should share this to the real time page in the future so people can see your McChickle post.
Yeah, as soon as this recording is up and live, I'll share that post that I put a couple of weeks up.
You can say a preview for the upcoming episode is my ramble about the McChickle I've made.
All right, I'll do that, and then I'll
we've gone
way off. Holy cow!
Let's go to Star Wars. Yeah. Star Wars is where it's at.
Let's go to a galaxy far, far away because that's where we're going at this point.
That's what it says on your T-shirt right now, too, by the way.
Long
time ago in a galaxy far, far away. We're getting those T-shirt references in today.
Yep. Star Wars Underworld tweeted, no.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, right?
You gonna let me do this?
Sorry.
Couldn't do this. We're just breaking down tonight. What's wrong with us?
Stop doing it.
So Star Wars Underworld has tweeted news. Star Wars Underworld has tweeted news according to the New York Times that Disney will be announcing a significant expansion of the Star Wars universe during tomorrow's investor presentation on the 10th of December.
It's the 10th here currently.
It's the 10th here currently and the 9th in the US. So at the time of this recording, anyway. We will no doubt talk more about this announcement on the next episode, whatever it may be, whether it's more episodes of something.
I think it's going to be talking about the future of Disney Plus and what they're wanting to do, and it's probably a little bit to do with the future of the movies and what they're planning. Because they've made all these random announcements about, was it Rian Johnson was going to get a trilogy of movies or a movie or something, and then there was the Game of Thrones writers, showrunners were going to get something as well, but then people didn't like the last season of Game of Thrones that much, so it kind of dampened the spirit of that. And obviously Mandalorian's taken off way bigger than I think even Disney expected it to.
I mean, everyone's saying that this is what Star Wars should be.
Yeah, and I think they're going to...
people are really positive on it.
And I think that's it. I think they're going to announce that all of a sudden, like... because I think Kathleen Kennedy's only got a certain amount of time left as the head of Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
And I think what they're going to do is put Dave Filoni in under her. I think this is going to be part of the announcement. They're going to put Filoni in as like the head of Star Wars under Lucasfilm. And then when she leaves, they're going to put him in as Lucasfilm, like in her place. I'm
potentially,
This is what I'm thinking.
That's a good call. I don't see a problem with that
because obviously with Lucasfilm, like Star Wars is like 85% of Lucasfilm, and the rest of the stuff's like the previous Lucasfilm games and like Indiana Jones. And so putting him in as like the head of like the Star Wars section under Lucasfilm to me makes sense at this point, considering that that's like a reward for doing so amazingly well over the last decade with the company.
Yeah.
And like how successful Mandalorian is, and they want him to guide where they want to take Star Wars, considering that this seems to be, as you said correctly, most people want this to be what Star Wars is.
Yeah. And Filoni's got a good head on him, because, I mean, George Lucas, like, ironically, like, master and apprentice, like, George Lucas has pretty much told Filoni everything that George Lucas knows about Star Wars,
and where he had planned and ideas.
Yeah, so
we talked about this earlier. You made the point that there was the Star Wars TV series that they were supposed to make like 10 years ago, and they wrote like somewhere between 100 and 150 episodes already, and there was planned to be like 400 of them, which is insane to think about.
Like 4 or 5 seasons or something, or several seasons.
Like it was going to be a decade's worth. Like when you were talking about like friggin' hundreds of episodes, you're talking a decade plus. I think it's like 20. No, that must be more than 20 seasons. To get to 600 episodes, it's got to be more than 20 seasons, depending on the average.
Depends on how many episodes a season, though.
But I would say it was going to be. I think it was under the old classic, like this is 24, 26 episodes a season kind of thing.
It would be a couple of decades.
But they wrote like 100 scripts, and it was to do with the underworld, and it was to do with a particular time frame in Star Wars. But there's no, as you correctly pointed out to me, there's no reason that they haven't been taking parts of these ideas and putting them in stuff like Mandalorian, like expanded other ideas.
They've already in Mandalorian, they've already taken stuff from not just Clone Wars and Rebels, but also stuff that's now considered legends, like the old comic books, the old novels,
the old video games.
Yeah. So
those bits are all right to be
stealing
stolen
from everywhere, so to speak.
So you're probably right. And so again, if you've got someone who knows all these details and is well versed in the lore and characters, and knows, has a plan, as we talked about before, having a plan, then it makes sense. But it'd be interesting. We're speculating. It could be anything. It could literally just be like, this is our slate of movies, or we're going to make these movies. We're actually going to take a break from them because the TV stuff's going so well. We're just going to make more TV stuff. They might announce a new Solo series. Who knows?
Well, I mean, we've got Obi-Wan starting filming. I think was it March, April next year.
So it's early next year.
Yeah. So I mean, that's definitely on the horizon. And I mean, there's rumored other TV series as well that's supposedly happening. Like there's a rumored Darth Maul series, and now there's a rumored Boba Fett series going to happen. But
there was also a rumored Darth Vader one as well. And,
so we don't know until.
I suspect the easiest thing to say is they're definitely going to come out and say we're making 3 more seasons of Mandalorian, like not even a question. I wouldn't be surprised if that comes straight.
No one's going to bat an eye.
No, they're going to be like, 3 more seasons without question. Like straight off the bat. That won't be surprised for that to hear that. But anything else,
I reckon they'll probably leave that for last. Like they'll just expect people to be wanting Mandalorian news.
Yeah, I mean
they'll leave that for last.
You've got to remember this is for investors. It's for the future thing, and obviously the news will get out. So we'll find out.
There'll be a press release.
And no doubt by the time we get around to recording the next episode, it'll have been around for a while, that we'll have plenty to talk about.
Black Panther 2 reported to be starting filming in July 2021. No comments have been made yet about the plans after the unexpected death of actor Chadwick Boseman, other than there are no plans to use a fully digital replacement for the actor at any stage.
I think that's a caveat, because I feel like they use that exact wording because they're going to try and figure out a way to use maybe existing footage of him somehow and stand-ins and not use a digital replacement. So how that's going to work, I don't know, but it's going to be weird to not be able to explain where he is or whatever.
Yeah, and they've got to sort of try and tie it in somehow, similar to what they did with Carrie Fisher in The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
Of using unused footage from Last Jedi and Force Awakens.
And they kind of said the same thing there, that they weren't going to make a digital Carrie Fisher, and it kind of was true because they used her daughter as the standard and only put her face over the top. So technically they didn't make a fully CG version of her either. So will they have like Chadwick Boseman's face on someone else? And then kind of you can say you didn't make a full digital replacement, you just made a partial one. Like it's tricky wording.
It's tricky wording there, Disney. But I think at this stage, like the rumors are that his sister will potentially take up the mantle anyway.
Yeah, that's my discussion.
I can't even remember her name now. Not just the actresses, but the actual character name.
Oh god, now it's gone
blank.
Letitia. Oh my god, the name's gone for me for the actress's name.
We'll move on. Speaking of Chadwick Boseman, the recent released PS4 and PS5 video game Spider-Man Miles Morales has a dedication to the actor in the credits. as well as a street located in the game named after him.
The interesting thing about the street thing is that they put it, I think it's a section of 42nd Street in New York.
Yeah.
And the relevance is obviously that 42 was the movie, what's his name? Jackie Robinson, the baseball player.
Baseball player. Oh.
And so
that makes sense.
Yeah,
That's
so they put it there as a relevance to that, and the numbers come up a lot in Boseman's career. And so and then there's a comment in the credits, as you mentioned as well, for the game. Yeah, it wasn't the only thing that came out that month that they did, though, as Disney updated the Marvel Studios logo on the Disney Plus version of Black Panther to include a tribute to Boseman. It's very similar, if you remember the one they did for Stan Lee.
Yeah.
It's like that, just pictures and film footage in the Marvel logo for him, and then they changed the colour of it to match the Black Panther colours.
Oh, that's cool. I might need to chuck that on now.
Yeah, so if you chuck it on, it's just the opening, the little sting for the Marvel Studios logo.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah. So they put that up. I think it was it would have been his birthday, I think, is when they put it up.
Yeah, that would make sense. Sticking with the MCU for now, Chris Pratt is to join the cast of Thor: Love and Thunder, returning as in the role of Peter Quill / Star-Lord. Looks like we will finally get the Asgardians of the galaxy, at least for a small part of the movie, like when Guardians of the Galaxy found Thor in Infinity War.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I think we talked about this. Did you? I don't know. I didn't add it to your comments, but I did show it to you, which was that currently Chris Hemsworth's getting really, really, really shredded, especially his upper body, to be Hulk Hogan. And Chris Pratt commented on it, basically saying, "Dude, can you just not?" And maybe put on 25 pounds so that
make the rest of us look bad.
Yeah, so because I need to stand beside you, and I've been told I'll look really bad if I have to stand beside that. So can you do that? Do me a solid.
Yeah. The only way I'd respond to that is Chris Pratt to work out more. I mean, he busted his ass for first Guardians.
That's true, but I don't know if he could do the bulk that Hemsworth's currently got. That's insane, man.
That is true. But
if anyone listening to this, go check out Chris Hemsworth's Instagram. It's a photo of him pushing one of those giant tractor tires, but Jesus, he freaking jacked.
Oh yeah,
he's like he's like Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah, he's going to tell you something, brother.
Yeah. I made the comment that he hadn't done really much with the legs, but you made the comment that Hulk Hogan never really did that either. So.
No, Hulk Hogan he wasn't really known for his leg department, even though one of his finishes was a leg drop.
Excuse me. Right. Yeah, sorry, his thing was a leg drop.
Yeah, it was one of his things. Well, a big boot and a leg drop, but he didn't really have big legs.
He was more
of an upper body because he was more of a bodybuilder.
And then he would shred his fucking tank tops.
Ripping his shirts, however many hundreds, thousands he went through in his career.
Pre-distressed ones, with the holes that made it easy to go.
Yeah, they'd already sort of snipped it at the collar.
Or the holes in the middle, which made he could grab at. Yeah. Oh, we're digressing again. We'll go back to Marvel related news. New cast members have been added to the Hawkeye Disney Plus series that we mentioned earlier on, according to Variety, alongside both Jeremy Renner and Haley Steinfeld, already noted as playing Hawkeye as both original and in the latter Kate Bishop version. Yep. New people have been signed up, including Vera Farmiga, Florence Pugh, Frey Free, Tony Dalton, Alakwa Cox, I don't know how to pronounce it, I'm going to assume that's correct, and Zakin, that's a name, McLaren. They've all joined. Pugh is reprising her role from the still upcoming Black Widow film, while all the other cast roles are mostly existing comic book characters. Farmiga, for example, is playing Bishop's mum, Eleanor, while other roles cast have connections to the character Hawkeye became in the Avengers movie Ronin. There are several others I didn't even bother listing. It would have been another whole paragraph explaining who all the characters were, but they've all got connections to the franchise, and if you want to find out more about who is playing what, it's all online, so just check it out. But it's very interesting that they announced all this thing pretty much in one go. So.
Yeah, and there's also been set pictures released as well with Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop in a full comic accurate suit as well.
Yes, I did see that. Yeah, it's interesting. Just so happened the same week they added the character to the Avengers video game as well. The same week that came out, just happened to be well timed. I think maybe that was a cross promotion idea. Maybe it was
pre-planned.
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just coincidence. But the same time that those came out, they just happened to add that character to the game. So interestingly enough.
Okay. The Hollywood Reporter has confirmed Alfred Molina has joined the cast of the next Spider-Man Tom Holland movie as Otto Octavius again. Previously, it was rumoured he was seen on set last month. This kicked off the rumours again that both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are coming back, with Garfield already signed up and Maguire in talks. but the rumours now also say Kirsten Dunst and somehow, spoilers, Emma Stone also to join. Where you've been written down here, when will this madness end? It definitely looks like they're setting up some sort of multiverse or Spider-Verse here, and a potential Sinister Six setup.
Yeah, with the
as well,
guys, because obviously we've also already had Electro and Jamie Foxx return from his version, which he did the Andrew Garfield movie.
And I mean, the Tom Holland ones is already set up. Vulture, Scorpion, and the Shocker as well.
And we've had, obviously this idea that with the Morbius trailer that we saw, Vulture, Michael Keaton's character, whether or not he's playing the character or not, we don't know which version. Is it the same version we know? Is it
whether it's a different
it's
universe.
the same character but from a different universe? And obviously we've also got all the Doctor Strange stuff going on with the multiverse and WandaVision and all that sort of stuff. So clearly there's an established thing. I wanted to mention the Emma Stone thing is a bit of a spoiler because, and again we're going to spoil a movie that came out a few years ago and Ryan hasn't even seen this, but she dies. So how she's going to come back, we don't know. There's a multiverse. Is it multiverse or multiverse? Is she playing Spider-Gwen, for example? So it's another multiverse version where she's playing an alternate version of the character she played in the Amazing Spider-Man films that didn't die, and she's the one that got burned by a spider because that's what was in the animated things. Who knows? We'll find out.
I think whatever it's going to be Spider-Man something home anyway.
Yeah.
Whether it's like homesick or... It's got to have home in it to keep up that tradition, I feel.
I guess so, yeah.
Like, I don't know what else you could really call it. I mean, you've had Homecoming, Far From Home. What do you call this one? Like Home Away From Home?
Yeah.
Home and Away? Homesick?
Homesick. I
don't know.
Oh, maybe there's a play on this multiverse thing to do with return to home, or who knows? We'll see. It's going to be interesting, but it's all the shooting's underway right now anyway, and we'll see what happens with those other potential rumours. We've been talking about whether or not it's going to happen. As I said, the reaction online meant that it was probably going to be willed to life.
I mean, like Sony and Marvel had sort of initially shut down early rumours, and they're like, "No, it's not happening." But now it seems to have like festered back up again.
Especially when you have confirmation that Alfred Molina's coming back, and you already had Jamie Foxx, and Fox made the comment like even after he'd accidentally kind of outed the fact that he was doing this, then people made a comment to him, and he made another post where he basically said he couldn't confirm or deny it, or made some he was like, if I was going to, it would be great, and it's like, dude, you've messed this up already. This looks fine. Other people would have found out.
All I want is just give us J.K. Simmons.
Well, we're getting that too. We already know. That's another one. He's come back.
Just give us that to just call all spider people.
Yeah,
all spider people menaces.
Yeah, they're all menaces.
And then to jump up on his desk in a spider suit himself. Only a few people will get that reference, hopefully. Bob's Burgers writers Lizzie Molyneux-Lagellan? Lagellan?
I don't know.
Lagellan, sorry if we're butchering that.
Sorry, Lizzie.
And Wendy Molyneux have been given the task of writing the Deadpool 3 movie for Disney. That's right, Disney. This makes a shift from the duo of Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, who wrote the first two for Fox, or 3 if you count Once Upon a Deadpool.
Because they did kind of write the extra content in the movie.
For that. It's like 2.5, I'd call that.
Yeah. But it's kind of still technically another movie. So. I'm not surprised that Disney maybe wanted to go in a different direction, or that a lot of the original creative team were like, we don't want to deal with Disney or anything like that. So there's no reason given us this. They've just said they're going to do it. But it's good. It's a good sign that they're wanting to move forward with the character. And given, I think I read that Kevin Feige's involved in like producing, like he has with everything else. So again, maybe it gives him that playground. He's like, you know what, you can do, if you want any of the actors and you want to play with it, it gives you that chance. They can play in the MCU and be self-referential to the fact that Deadpool has straddled a non-existent universe with the X-Men related adjacent films to this version. We'll see. We theorized about this another episode about what they could actually potentially do, and it could open up some very interesting possibilities. Yeah,
well, because I mean, there's even, I think, in it's the first Deadpool when they're in that scrapyard. They're having that fight. There's like a downed helicarrier in the background.
That's what they're fighting on. That's the whole platform.
Oh yeah, it is too. Yeah, so it's like it's got to somehow tie into it.
They didn't reference it, but they're just like blatantly.
It's just there.
It's just there. It's the thing that they're fighting on is the helicarrier.
Yeah, so it's got to be there somehow, and they've got to. It's weird. It's in its own universe, but with the X-Men as well. But now it's got to come into the MCU.
It is so blatantly predictable that Hugh Jackman is definitely going to turn up in this.
Oh, he has to.
Because it won't be as Wolverine, it'll just be as Hugh Jackman, but because he's been doing all these things with Ryan Reynolds now, it would be ridiculous for him not to turn up.
Yeah.
For at least a scene.
It's
for something.
It's just got to be Hugh Jackman, not necessarily as himself, but I say in quotes, himself, so a version of himself. Yeah. So whether it's like in X-Men Origins or not, where he's just like, fuck off. Like, because I mean, we've technically already seen him in the first two Deadpool films, once as the Sexiest Man Alive cover that Deadpool eventually puts on his own face under the mask, and then the Wolverine figure that Deadpool cherishes at the start of the second one.
Yeah.
So we've got to actually see Hugh Jackman show up and
do
something.
He's going to do it. He's going to do it.
He has to. Like, just throw money at him. Just go, here. Just, you don't have to say schnicked. You don't have to have claws come out. Just
you don't have to bulk up. You don't have to rage. You just be yourself. We can get you singing and dancing. We don't fucking care.
Yeah, we'll get you singing and dancing in your Logan jacket. That's all we need.
Singing about being Wolverine.
Yeah.
That'd be hilarious. That actually would be pretty fun.
Here, wear this mask. This comic accurate mask that we never saw.
Make him wear the comic accurate suit.
Yeah, that would be good. The yellow and the blue.
Yes, like pretending to be like a version of Wolverine and like complaining about
it.
That
that would actually be quite good. Yeah. If it's like he walks into a costume store or something and he's trying on the comic accurate suit, that would be the way to do it.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll move on. The CW rebranded the Arrowverse as the CW verse, which should have gone with the DC TV multiverse.
Yeah, well, which
a lot of people are saying online.
This added the question we were talking about. I think it was the last episode where you were talking about how they're doing that other show that seems to be connected to this, but it's on a different network or a different platform. What was the one we were talking about? I forgot.
I can't remember.
You know what I'm talking about, though,
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so there was one show that's still coming out that's not on the CW. It's on another platform.
Yeah.
And we were like, is this part of that universe or not? I can't remember. Was it Green Lantern?
I think so, yeah. It's like Green... Yeah, because it's HBO.
HBO, so there you go. So we were like, well, was this part of it or not? Because it's still the same showrunner and all that. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah,
it's even like Arrow lead Stephen Amell has come out and said that it doesn't sound right, especially since without his show of Arrow, none of it would have been possible in the first place.
Are the people online mostly still, let's just call it the Arrowverse because it's much easier?
I think that's the colloquial term for everybody. Like, even before it sort of got coined, everyone still called it the Arrowverse, even with like just Arrow and Flash before like Supergirl and Legends of Tomorrow came in.
This just makes me wonder if there's more plans to do with this whole CW universe, that why you would create a rebranding, or at least an official branding, because I assume Arrowverse was never official.
No. It's just what everyone sort of called it
exactly. That there's some reasoning for that there's some marketing reason or plans for future to do with what they're doing on that. But who knows? It might just be because someone just coined it that, and they've just now said that's what it's going to be. We don't care what people have been calling it because.
Yeah, well, see, it gets confusing as well because calling it the DC TV multiverse, but now you've also got the DC movie universe as well.
Yeah, but those things may end up being connected because of the Flash.
Yeah, they do tie in as well. So it's like,
so it's just a DC multiverse.
Yeah, why not just call it the DC multiverse, if anything?
Yeah, that's true. Rather than the CW verse.
Yeah, or
even the Arrowverse,
the DC TV verse.
Yeah, there's just the DC multiverse.
But they've really shot themselves in the foot.
The DC media multiverse.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong. Like the whole side of the Arrowverse, I'm going to call it, has done well, but as soon as they came out with the likes of Justice League movies and all of those, they kind of really shot themselves in the foot.
Well, that was because they had that plan beforehand, and it wasn't very well planned out. Yeah,
this alludes to what we were talking about earlier. They've gone to the studio and just gone, we want to make this many movies. And
it was because of Marvel and the Avengers, because they went, well, look what they're doing. We just need to make a shared universe with all our characters, and then they ran before they could walk, and we went Man of Steel. And then Batman v Superman.
Yeah, straight away.
And then Justice League, like within that 3 run, where it wasn't. And then it was Wonder Woman kind of adjacent, and Aquaman came out later. And then we've got another Wonder Woman sequel coming, which we'll come back to later. But like, it's it's the same thing. Whereas again, I think the Arrowverse did it right. You had a core show which people liked, and then they went, right, we're going to make another show in that same vein, and that did well. And then they went, right, we're going to connect all these up now and start putting more characters in and having crossovers, and we can do it this way. And they built it organically where the audience was, not where they thought the audience was going to be.
Or where they want to direct the audience to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then find that the audience isn't there and doesn't like it and hates the fact that Superman and Batman are fighting and they both have a mother called Martha. It's
it's a mess.
It is.
Now, James Gunn has revealed that Sylvester Stallone also joined the cast of Suicide Squad in an unknown role. Additionally, at the same time, the movie's spin-off series about John Cena's Peacemaker has announced some of its supporting actors, with Danielle Brooks, Jennifer Holland, Chris Conrad, and Robert Patrick all signed on.
Yes, that is also T-1000 Robert Patrick, if you were
yeah.
sure.
Not to be confused with... Is there another famous Robert Patrick out there?
But maybe. Just in case there's a new Robert Patrick. It could be a young person that's just got the name Robert Patrick.
That's true. It could be spelt differently.
Stallone joining the Suicide Squad is probably not too surprising, considering he was in Guardians 2.
Yeah.
But they haven't announced who he's playing, and he wasn't part of the original announcement lineups when they actually revealed who was playing who and what. So I suspect much like Guardians 2, maybe a small role or an important role, but one that they can't talk about or don't want to reveal until you see it.
Yeah, I'd definitely say that's about the same. Because, I mean, I think, was Sylvester Stallone semi-announced in Guardians, or was he?
I can't remember if he was or not. I think, no, he wasn't, because he might have been, like... It might have been leaks that he was in it, but I don't think it was properly announced. And then obviously all the other characters, or the other actors playing the other characters, were a part of the Ravagers.
Yeah.
Were all famous people, and a lot of them weren't announced, definitely.
Yeah.
So I think it was part and parcel of that. So it could be very similar to that. I'm still not sure about the idea of needing this Peacemaker series, but without knowing what the relevance to the movie is, it's going to be interesting, and why this is, and why him and stuff. So there's got to be something going on there too. So that'd be interesting, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely. I suppose you could probably say it's good for John Cena's career. I mean, it's getting his name out there more and away from the wrestling, much like Dwayne Johnson did.
I mean, yeah, he's been doing a lot of stuff across both comedy, action, or action comedy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not too much of a surprise, I guess.
No. Hallelujah. We've got a new Snyder Cut Justice League trailer, which features more Superman and Darkseid, but still features that terrible version of that song. Well, it's not a terrible version, it's just the way it's used.
It's a different version, because the previous trailer used the original
Leonard
Cohen version, whereas this is a cover, so it's almost like they didn't get the permission to use that version of the song, so they commissioned another cover of it to use instead, which is very weird. It's about what I expect.
Yeah, it gives us Black Suit Superman, it gives us Darkseid. That's about it.
Yeah, and if you've seen the previous trailer, most of it's the same otherwise. And it's, again, still just announcing the fact that they're doing this on HBO Max next year.
And was it 4 or 5 parts? 4 parts.
4 parts. Yeah. 4-part series.
Yeah, that's right. Because otherwise it's be one hell of a long movie. On the Cinema Blend Real Blend podcast, Wonder Woman director Patty Jenkins was critical of Joss Whedon's take on the Justice League, noting that I felt that version contradicted my first movie in many ways, and this current movie, which I was already in production on. And when talking about planning her character to match what Zack Snyder had planned compared to the end result, I think that Justice League was kind of an outlier. They were trying to turn one thing into kind of another, and so then it becomes, I don't recognise half of these characters, I'm not sure what was going on.
Yeah. For someone who's heavily involved in this universe and whose version of Wonder Woman was so well received, those are not good statements to be hearing.
No.
It's adding fuel to the fire about how many people were displeased outside of the management at Warner Brothers about having Joss Whedon do his take rather than just finishing Zack Snyder's version. Or just putting the film on hiatus and letting Zack Snyder deal with his family issues.
Yeah, and then
come back when he felt comfortable to finish the movie, if it meant delaying it. But clearly they were so set in stone. No, we've set a date. No, we're going to do this. We're just going to do it. And then when Joss Whedon comes in and says, this is the way I want to do it, and them giving him just the carte blanche to do it, like just saying, yep, do it the way you want to do it, it obviously didn't sit well with a lot of people.
No.
Inadvertently or directly. So,
and I think we talked about that with the Zack Snyder cut coming out as well, of just how people want his original ideas of it, and how the characters just don't seem like the characters from like the previous movies, like, especially Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman was a perfect example with the way, but then part of that might be Zack Snyder, because we don't know which parts of that were shot, which were originally his footage, or which ones were the reshoots or extra shoots. So it's kind of interesting. So I guess it won't be until that final version, the Snyder Cut, comes out, where we realise how much of that was Joss Whedon and how much of it was originally already in there. I mean, this is the thing I think we talked about before. It's like Batman v Superman I didn't really care for. It doesn't enthuse me for his cut of Justice League any more than the final version. Obviously, all the stuff that's come out about Joss Whedon that has been said makes me like the Justice League version that we've got even less, because I didn't really love that either. But the more I hear, I'm just like, well, this is not a good outcome for anyone, really.
No.
So on that level, I'm just curious to see what the differences are, not whether or not it's a better movie, just what differences there are, I guess, yeah.
Speaking of Wonder Woman, Wonder Woman 1984 was announced being released to HBO Max in the US on December 25th, and in cinemas elsewhere where able around the world. Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot reportedly to have been paid $10 million each up front to get them on board for the strategy, as both were probably supposed to benefit from the box office returns.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty standard contract agreement, especially for sequels, is that actors will end up getting a certain cut of, at a percentage-wise of box office. And so I can imagine the plans were, after how successful the first Wonder Woman was, that they were expected to get profit points, basically, off the movie. And now that it's not really coming to cinemas, Warner's come to them with a bare minimum amount, which may or may not be better than what they would have got had the movie gone ahead as normal. They probably would have, if it made as much or more than the last Wonder Woman, I suspect they probably would have made more than $10 million for the returns. But given the circumstances and the strategy, they're probably weren't going to get anything close to that. So it's probably a good payday, and it's just to make sure that they're happy with the situation.
Yeah.
I think we should move on, because this is a big thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of leading into it, is that after they made this announcement, Warner Brothers then later dropped basically a megaton announcement regarding its 2021 film slate.
Huge.
It was huge, and it shocked the industry across the board. Basically, they were announcing their entire slate for 2021. Their current offerings will launch day and date in US cinemas and on HBO Max. So the catch there is that the films will only be on HBO for the first 30 days before they go to normal video on demand rental platforms. So after that, they can go to Apple and all that sort of stuff for people to watch. Technically, this starts with Wonder Woman, because it's the first one they're doing at Christmas, already announced. But then it'll include 17 movies, all of the movies for the slate, following, unless they're moved or taken off the slate at a later point. So the films for that year are listed as The Little Things with Denzel Washington, Judas and the Black Messiah, Tom and Jerry, Godzilla vs. Kong, Mortal Kombat, Those Who Wish Me Dead, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, In the Heights, Space Jam: A New Legacy, Suicide Squad, Reminiscence, Malignant, June, The Many Spirits of Newark, which is the Sopranos prequel, King Richard, Cry Macho, and The Matrix 4, or whatever The Matrix ends up being called, the fourth Matrix. The shock of this online was so huge, like just the reaction from critics, the reaction from just general punters, and as it came out later in the week, the shock across the board from people involved in the industry. One of the things that came out was that apparently Warner Brothers told Legendary Pictures, who we talked about earlier, the company who has two movies on that slate, which is Godzilla vs. Kong and June, and they only told them 30 minutes before that was made public.
Whoa. It's cutting it fine.
It is cutting it really fine. Now, Legendary paid for 75% of the production costs of both films, reportedly, with Warner's making up the remaining and the marketing costs.
Yeah.
And they had a deal apparently in place regarding Godzilla vs. Kong's post-cinema release, so it was to put it on Netflix as part of an agreement deal, which I think they have to get Warner Brothers to sign on to. And this has put that whole thing in jeopardy, because obviously putting it on another streaming platform, Netflix may go, well, it's already been on a platform, we don't want it. Or will want it, but they'll offer less money because it's not unique. And so it seems they're going to be disputing this thing and potentially taking legal action against Warner Brothers to try and block those two from being part of this programming schedule. On top of it, cinemas were not particularly impressed, so unsurprisingly, cinema executives weren't reacting very well, including embattled AMC Cinemas CEO Adam Aaron, who I keep trying to say is Aaron,
Yeah.
who stated that Warner Media, with this choice, quote, intends to sacrifice a considerable portion of the profitability of its movie studio division and that of its production partners and filmmakers to subsidise its HBO Max startup. As for AMC, we will do all in our power to ensure that Warner does not do so at our own expense. It sounds like they were also not informed any earlier, also learning at the same time as the public did. So this is that's a pretty shocking thing for the distribution arms to learn, especially something like we've talked about previously, AMC, who's bleeding money currently.
Yeah, and closing cinemas.
Yeah. Crazily enough, this is not everything. So apparently some of the directors of the films also only found out about the same time, so around the time we knew in public,
this is insane.
and are not pleased to find the outcome. None impacted have yet made official comment on the situation, but one director who wasn't impacted did, and that was Christopher Nolan. Nolan has released basically every film he's made since 2002 to Warner Brothers, I think. I might be wrong with that, but I'm pretty sure it's the case, until this year's Tenet, and he made a statement to the Hollywood Reporter where he slams the decision for this release strategy, saying that the company is dismantling a system that already works and called the HBO Max platform, quote, the worst streaming service.
Wow.
The article also points out numerous levels of existing production and distribution do not agree with the decisions made for the 17 film slate, so also expect to hear more of this decision in the months ahead. So it's literally like this will have a recurring thing. Obviously, it's the other part of confidence that's lacked in the industry is what other platforms will do. Will Disney consider doing this more? And we talked about this a little bit before with the live action movies. I think when it's an internal thing, like if Warner has its own costs and stuff, then it's probably well within its rights to do whatever it wants, as long as they've paid the directors and cast and crew appropriately, and like what we saw with Wonder Woman, where they've decided to give this cash out bonus against the box office. But for companies like Legendary, who sunk money into it with a particular release strategy and plan, obviously it seems like they probably should have had a conversation more than 30 minutes before.
Yeah, it kind of seems like something you'd probably say like the day before, if anything.
At least, or a week, week before, or the weekend, but before the previous weekend.
At least, some sort of heads up in like 30 minutes, and the same, today's world is nothing.
Exactly, and the same with the directors and stuff as well. The people who've put time, effort, energy into these movies to give them a heads up that this is something they're doing, and so that they can recourse their own decisions about what they want out of this deal. Because imagine you have a contracted agreement, and the part of it is the fact that this movie is for cinema release, and someone like Nolan, who obviously loves cinema releases, this would be a big deal. And if they had come to him about Tenet the same way, I can imagine he wouldn't have gone quietly on it.
No, he'd definitely let his voice heard.
So it's a big deal, and it has a lasting impact, because not only are we looking at what other studios will do, but what this means for the future. Interestingly, funnily enough, several years back, in a roundabout way, there was a talk. I think it was a university talk or something. I forget. It was big news at the time. It was like 2013, I think. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg attended a seminar thing that they talked about their filmmaking careers and the future of cinema. And Spielberg, in particular, made this comment about the future of movies and the cinema going experience is in jeopardy.
Yeah.
That the idea is that we will go to a streaming platform where choice will not be choice; it'll be taken away, just like every other option. Essentially, for lack of a better description, it was to summarize what he covered. And I remember at the time, everyone was like, "Oh, they're out of touch. They clearly don't know what's going on. This is not going to happen. Like, clearly, this is not the case." And I think some of the critics at home were citing like the advent of 3D cinema and boutique cinema and all this sort of stuff. But Spielberg was right.
Yeah.
That's the crazy thing. Like 7 years later, and it may have taken part of a pandemic to kind of maybe hurry it along.
Yeah, but it
still happened. And he said at the time, I don't think he predicted it to happen immediately.
No.
But he just said it's a possibility, and so it's become very interesting to see that come up a lot over the last week as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, Spielberg's definitely one of those directors. He's been around long enough where he can predict trends and what's going to come and go.
I don't think it's just that. I mean, that's definitely part of it, but I just think he's one of those filmmakers who's realistic about the film industry. And whereas other people, and this is not to take the piss out of Christopher Nolan, but Nolan has a very specific view on how cinema should work. And Spielberg has made comments that have pissed people off about, Netflix and the Oscars, for example, and so forth. But generally, I think it's for those same reasons. He sees the potential of the way that cinema is treated to be eroded, but he doesn't do it in the way that Nolan kind of does, where it seems kind of elitist. Yeah. I think Spielberg is just meaning it the best interests of people. It's not to benefit him so much as it is to benefit the way the industry works. And I can see that. Like, I can see
that's understandable.
I can see the argument that you want to make say if this streaming services are so massive, do the Oscars, which are about cinema releases and the rules about cinema, do you separate those things? So you have the Oscars for movies that come out at cinemas, and then do you have like another award?
Do you have like the Webbies or something?
Yeah, but for web-based streaming content, which is totally true because you can cover different genres that you would, and you still have all the same things like actors and cinematography and editing, all that sort of stuff. You just separate those things out because if one becomes so dominant or over the other, then it kind of messes up what the point is. But then the counter argument is that they're all cinema, they're all still films, and you have TV, which is your Emmys, and they cover web stuff too.
Yeah, and whether they have a mass cinema release shouldn't really matter. It's still a film. People are still working their ass off to do it. They're still getting millions of dollars to make it. So
at the end of the day, the awards should be the same regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that'll be telling is this year's Oscars, the ones that are coming up, like how many pictures have been released, how much stuff's been pushed back, and future ones too, because obviously with the knock-on effect of pushing movies back has that impact that we'll have more movies coming out in a shorter time frame, and if the studios don't push them out apart. And if you look at the actual schedule for next year, it is chocker. Absolutely chocker at this point until studios start, like, they won't even do it for the COVID reasons anymore. They'll start realizing, well, that movie's picking up a lot of steam, for interest. We don't want to be near it. We're going to clear out. We're going to move our release later because we don't want this movie, which will do okay, but up against that, it's going to bomb.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen a lot. I can see that already happening. So it's setting some very interesting precedents for Warner Bros. Gutsy decision. Not an easy decision, definitely. But obviously, from an international perspective, it doesn't make any difference. For outside of the US, we just get cinema releases where possible. For here in New Zealand, we're lucky that we'll probably just be like Wonder Woman's coming out on Boxing Day here, I think. So it's very straightforward.
And I think the only sort of on that sort of vein, the only thing we've sort of got at the same time as the US would be the Scorsese film, the one on Netflix.
Oh yeah, The Irishman.
The Irishman.
Yeah, we've had a few. We've had a few of those come out. I think Roma might have been at select recent cinemas at Netflix, but Netflix did a lot of these to fulfill Oscar requirements. If you remember,
because there needed to be a certain
amount
release.
of theatrical release of a certain descriptor. So and it ended up being distributed worldwide in some cases. But yeah, I mean, we could see, and that's true. The opposite is true. We could see. Once the dust settles on COVID and things from a cinema perspective are starting to get back to normal, we could see that more of those streaming movies on the reverse end up getting cinema releases for those that are interested. But we could go down a rabbit hole with this because there's a whole thing about how Netflix's distribution model for cinema releases was much different than any other theatrical release because they didn't need to report their earnings for a reason because they were independent and as long as they booked, I think their plan was to book out the cinemas you just screen it in regardless of whether or not people turn up and pay for the tickets. Netflix just paid for the cinema. So they essentially paid for the cinema and then they got like 98% of the ticket profits back straight in, because they'd already paid the cinemas to play it. So I think that's an interesting thing, and because of that, they didn't need to report the box office because technically the box office is whatever they paid, regardless of whether or not the seats were one person was in the cinema or the whole thing was full. So,
fair.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and whether or not Netflix wants to keep throwing money at that idea for big things, if they have to meet Oscar requirements, of course they're going to do it.
Yeah,
because that's money that the other companies would spend on an Oscar campaign anyway. But yeah, I mean, from your perspective, like, because I've been rambling on for what feels like an hour. What do you think about this as a future of streaming media and cinema going and all that sort of stuff? Especially for you, someone who deals with digital media a lot for their work and obviously knows like all the streaming platforms are kind of like where everything's at, and we all gear up and get excited when we want to sit down and watch a new episode of Mandalorian or Cobra Kai or whatever on Netflix or it's an interesting place for the future to be.
I'm still for like your standard movie releases, but I think there shouldn't be like a Netflix exclusive movie. That should maybe still be, depending on how big the movie is or who the director might be, like Scorsese. Like if it's someone like big sort of star power like him, then yes, a movie should be like in a cinema release as well as Netflix if they want to. I mean,
I don't mean to interrupt, but on that question, I mean that's essentially what HBO is trying to do here. Not Warner Brothers is trying to do. They're going like you can do it in streaming, and they're not saying they're not releasing it in cinemas in the US. They're just knowing that obviously COVID is an impact, and they can't guarantee the number of cinemas. So therefore, they want to say in case you wanted to see it and you can't get to a cinema, or you're worried about going to a cinema, you can watch it here. Yeah. But then you can see the counter argument from studio production companies and directors and stuff, where this seems like it kind of seems like a cash grab. It seems like this is to try and get people to pay for HBO Max, and not really about the cinema experience, and not about the movies themselves. It's more about like, you wanted to see Wonder Woman, or you wanted to see this or that or whatever, but you can also see all this other stuff that like Friends. Oh yeah, like this, and I can kind of see that's it's a bit cynical, but it's probably there's truth in it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, I don't know. I think if it does somehow affect the Oscars, that they're not going to have like certain online sort of web-based movies that are eligible, qualify or whatever.
Yeah, eligible is good.
Then, then there should be like their own sort of Webby Awards or something. And
technically the Webbies exist as a title, but I know what you mean, like an equivalent streaming.
Or the Streamies or something.
Streamies.
Streamies. Like, I don't know what you'd call it. Like, don't cross the Streamies.
Don't cross the Streamies. They just have the remaining Ghostbusters cast.
Yeah.
Stand there and be like, don't cross the Streamies.
But, I mean, if that's the case, then... I reckon they should at least have a stunt award and just stick it to the Oscars.
And a casting director one too.
Yeah, stick it to the Oscars again. No, fuck you. Just really stick it to them.
I'll put it in perspective. Put yourself in the idea of, and this is just a question. This has got no true answer or anything. But put yourself in the perspective of, say you're an average American film watcher. Mm-hmm. You're you, but you live in America.
Yeah.
And you some of these movies that I listed off the slate of 18 movies, including Wonder Woman, you want to see, but you know the risks of COVID or the cinema near you isn't closed. Would it convince you, knowing that that's an option for the first 30 days, to pick up HBO Max if you hadn't previously? Knowing that you're going to see a slate of movies over the next 13 months. Does that convince you? That's what Warner Brothers wants to know.
See, for me, I would probably look at what else is on there, which would convince me to not just pay the subscription fee just for this one thing, if that makes sense. It's similar to what I've done with Disney Plus.
Yeah, so this is exactly what I was making the point before, which is that they want to entice you to look at everything else. They want you to think about the service. You might be going there to begin with because you were interested in Wonder Woman or Matrix 4 or Mortal Kombat or whatever it is, but they want you more because they want that customer base, like it is with Netflix, where you go, right, what other stuff's on here, what's also appealing, what's for Warner Brothers, there's a lot of the Batman movies for example, or Friends, as I mentioned earlier on, or these sorts of things, and it's that sort of stuff that's trying to encourage, and that's where I think the criticism, especially, I mean, understandable from a movie theatre organisation, of course they want people to come in because that's their money, that's bums on seats is making the money, but even from a craft level, some people will be like, well, you're taking away the importance of the movie. It's just part of your streaming service. It's no longer an event. It's not about going to go see Wonder Woman, it's about joining HBO Max. And that overshadows the choice that you even have, because it'll be interesting to see how they market it. I would guarantee that the promotions will mostly push for HBO Max, and it'll say on HBO Max this day and in select cinemas. Yeah,
and like very small print or something.
Or smaller print, because HBO Max will be their mainstay. That's actually it.
And, I think for me, if it was such a big name movie like Wonder Woman, then I probably would risk going to see it in the cinema.
Yeah, if you're keen.
Yeah, but there's pros and cons to both sides. I mean, obviously, if it was like in America, you've got your COVID situations and all that, and then you got to look at whether you want to fork out whatever it is for HBO Max as on just for that one movie, but then you've also got everything else that you go, what's going to be cheaper in the long run, sort of thing.
I mean, the other thing, I don't know what HBO Max's plans are. I think it's probably open, just like most of them, it's probably open term. So in theory, I guess if you really want to see a movie, you could sign up for a month or whatever, and then not renew. and then re-sign up when you want to see whatever else comes out.
See something else, yeah.
Or stick with it as long as you've got stuff you want to see, I guess. But again, I think that it undermines the idea of why they want these movies to be events or why you even have cinema in the first place. Yeah. It's a very giant can of worms to open up. But,
for sure. I mean, we could spend all night, but...
honestly, yeah, that's the thing. We should move on. We've spent about 20 minutes, I swear, it feels like, but yeah.
We'll come to our In Memoriam section now.
Thankfully not massive this month, which is nice for a change.
Touch wood. So we lost, not we, but I guess
everyone
in general, the world lost Hugh Keays-Byrne.
Yeah.
Was it Keys? Yeah. Hugh Keays-Byrne, famous Australian actor, most well known for the roles of Toe Cutter in Mad Max and Immortan Joe in Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah, it was interesting reading, especially George Miller's comments about him, and just he talked about him being this intense, deeply spoken actor, and so intimidating just with the look of his eyes, which obviously he made so much use of, especially in Fury Road. But that he was the complete opposite of like the characters he's played, such a gentle and kind person, and so
it's always the way.
I know I've seen a few other Australian things he's been in, but for the most part, I haven't seen him really out of any of those two roles, and they're not two bad roles to be remembered from. Like in the scale of things, I suspect. If he'd had his way, I'm sure George Miller would have liked to have had him back for this Furiosa prequel, because
I was about to ask about that.
Because they're playing a younger version. There's a whole backstory to that character, because he's actually I think he was like a military general or something. He was a military something, and and that's why he was the leader. He became born leader essentially for this group, and there was a whole character backstory for him and everything. So there's a lot of outpouring about that, and a lot of people who managed to work with him over the years, and especially in Australian acting. I guess there's acting royalty in Australia that were all very well spoken about their time working with him through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and 2000, like right up to like 50 years or something.
You're making that sound like a radio station.
Yeah, but for the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So it wasn't a surprise. Wasn't young, but again, like I think of just people are just like one of those people who I think again Miller said something about the world is those cliche comments to say, but it's true. The world is not the same without having him here.
Yeah, for sure. There was also Ed Murray of the Murray brothers, so Bill and Brian Doyle.
And three others.
However many others.
There's five of them, I think.
Yeah, I think they're the two that I can name.
Two others. There's two others, only Ed.
Yeah.
So Ed, I think Ed is the oldest, I think. He was the oldest, sorry, I should say. And I might be incorrect there, but he's the one that he started as a golf caddy when he was 10 years old.
Oh, wow.
Which is really ridiculous to think about it. And but he's the one I think that where the whole family's got their passion for golf, and they're all in on that. They've got golf brand and apparel. I think they have a golf club of their own and like a caddy shack kind of merchandise brand, but and they're all in on it. So the entire family is involved, and he it sounded like he from the comments that he was almost like the linchpin of the group.
Yeah.
So that a sad announcement. I didn't really say. He just talked about him and his family and the golf stuff, but I don't actually know what he did in day-to-day life, what he used to do if he'd retired. Cause I think he was in his mid-70s. So outpouring from the remaining the family all over the internet at the time. So
finally, we lost David Prowse, better known as Darth Vader from the Star Wars franchise. He was 85 after a short illness. He was a former bodybuilder who eventually became friends with other competitors like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno.
Prowse was I was very lucky. I met David Prowse in 2003. He came to New Zealand for the Armageddon. It was the first one I ever went to. It was in Wellington, and he had the command of the room essentially because he had. I don't know if you've been. Have you been to the Michael Fowler Centre?
No.
Okay, so the Michael Fowler Centre has like one of those sound amphitheaters. It's just acoustically centered, and it's amazing. It's a lovely venue, and it was literally just him on a stage, and he had like a one man kind of almost I want to say one man show, but it was not. That's doing it disservice. It was a talk. It would be like doing a TED talk or something, where he talked about his career and his life. And of course, he talked about Star Wars, but he also talked about he was a road safety campaign.
Yep.
He was the Green Cross Man. Green Cross Man, thank you. I was trying to remember what it was. In the UK, so he talked a bit about that. He talked about his history in bodybuilding. He talked about other films he was in, and it was for someone who'd never been to an Armageddon or anything like this before in my life before then. he was so engaging, and I don't even remember why. I walked in, but I didn't even know he was going to be on stage. I didn't see a sign saying he was on, and they didn't do announcements like they do now. It just was a schedule on a door, and I didn't even really read it. I just saw there was a guest speakers, and so I sat in. And honestly, I was so glad I did, because what an amazing stories to listen to. And he just come into the room. He talked a lot about his embattlements with George Lucas. Because obviously he was the type of person who was very outspoken, but also spoke spoilers or things that he shouldn't have said, which got him in trouble a lot. Some people have always said that aside from the fact that Lucas decided that he was going to put someone to be the visage of Darth Vader when they took the mask off, that one of the reasons he also didn't pick David Prowse to do it was because he was so slighted against him.
Oh yeah.
And whether or not that's true has never been ascertained. George Lucas has never confirmed it. And when Prowse died, he made some very kind remarks regarding his career and his efforts, especially towards Star Wars, in regards to Darth Vader, particularly saying, James Earl Jones made him the voice, but he wouldn't have had the presence without David Prowse's physicality.
No.
Which is entirely true. I didn't put it on the list, but we had the movie marathon here again this year, just a week or so, or last weekend. And we're not supposed to really talk about the movies, and I think previous years I've just talked about it in general as an idea. Yeah. This year, obviously, being 2020, there's not really anything new, so it was all very old movies. But they made a particular note to place some stuff with people who had passed away. So we had a movie with Sean Connery in it, and we also had a movie with David Prowse, which was very good. And it was a movie I'd never seen. It was one of the Hammer horror films. Mm-hmm. And in it, he played a bodybuilder, which is very much on point for him, but in a circus. So he spoke next to nothing. Yeah. He was a physical presence, which is entirely what Prowse was, ironically, in a lot of things. But he had a screen persona, the people that you talked about, like Arnie and Lou Ferrigno, who would definitely be looking up to in the 70s. Yeah. They're like, if we want to get to that level, and we want to go beyond it. We want to become iconic, and we want to be able to be taken seriously as actors. And Prowse never probably got that chance. He was a little bit too early.
Yeah.
But Star Wars was his thing too, in that way. And so he was very, very lucky. But yeah, I've said way more than I expected about Dave Prowse, but it was because of the fact that I managed to see him and meet him. I went and shook his hand and had a chat to him very briefly afterwards. And there's a documentary which I've talked about before as well.
The I Am Your Father.
Yeah, and it's and I honestly said, for him to get to 85 with the history he had, especially in the last 10 to 15 years, medically, he's not been the best.
Yeah. So
for him to live till late 2020 in the age of 85, he's done really well.
Yeah.
Because you see that documentary and you go, wow, he might be dead next week.
Yeah. Because even in the Elstree 1976 documentary, he's in that, and he how old's that now? 5 or 6 years. Even then he didn't. He didn't really look like he was in good health, but he looked okay.
He was okay. I think most of his health was it?
He just looked like old age was sort of slowly catching
up.
Yeah.
So he's done very well. So yeah. Again, as I said, outpouring from people with George Lucas, but many of the Star Wars cast, many other people worked with him in the British film industry. Worked in the road safety campaigns. He did a lot of charity work too, which was not surprising as well, given his background. So a loss indeed.
We'll move on to trailers and teasers now. There was a teaser I think nobody really asked for of Clifford the Big Red Dog.
Are we talking about the teaser or the movie?
Both.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, the only reason I put this down because I had to show you because you didn't see it was how ridiculous it is. There's something, there's a weird uncanny valley thing going on where it's a relatively, on the scale of a dog, you took the actual scale out of it. As a dog, it's realistic looking enough.
Yeah.
Slightly cartoony, but it's like a normal dog, but just coloured red.
Yeah,
but not
just thrown it in paint.
Yeah, it's like they've just changed it. But there's something about its motion and the way it carries itself. For a dog that's supposed to be big, I think when we were talking about it as well, the idea that it's a puppy, I think in that means it's going to grow into a bigger dog.
Potentially, but because if you see this teaser or just a still of it, it does look like it's a puppy of only a few months old,
several months maybe most.
And it's just been painted red, but
it is CG because the way it reacts in the last shot of it licking the screen, it's clearly animated.
Yeah,
but it's because it's got into that weird photorealistic texturing thing, but it moves not right. And I think for a dog, this is the thing a lot of movies get wrong about sense of scale. We talk about CG weightlessness, moving stuff around weightlessness, but same with scale. Things that are big take longer. That's one of the things that and again, I don't want to use a Marvel film for this example, but like Ant-Man, perfect example,
Yeah.
in that airport fight, they thought about the physicality of the fact that he's giant, and it takes him longer to react to things because it's a little more momentum, more energy, more movement, so he's a little bit slower moving.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. You want something that's that size, does not move like a normal puppy would.
No.
It's going to be slightly slower and a little bit more clumsy or a little bit more lumbering because of its size. And the bigger it gets, the more that's going to be the case. And so if it moves like a normal puppy, it kind of looks a bit weird.
Yeah.
But then there's something else about that. It's like maybe an uncanny valley, but it makes me feel uncomfortable. And I know I'm not the only one. I know the reason I put it in there is because literally the amount of outcry on the internet about how freaking weird it looks is clearly something. And maybe this will turn into a Sonic the Hedgehog and they'll go, right, we need to fix this.
Yeah.
Or it won't.
It's
but,
potentially, but I think this is definitely going to be more, well, not that Sonic wasn't really aimed at kids, but more sort of people our age who grew up playing the games, but
it's a bit of a mixed bag.
I think Clifford's probably still going to be more aimed at kids anyway.
And I don't know if kids will be that picky, but I think the adults who are going to have to take their kids are going to be a little bit more like, this is because if you don't believe in the dog, then it's half the problem. Like, it's called Clifford the Big Red Dog. He's the title character. You have to get it right. It's like Sonic the Hedgehog. Again, he was the title character. You have to get it right. Like, other animated films, Tom and Jerry, which again I don't. Do we really need this? Like, it's like,
I don't think so.
It was not exactly, and this has now gone on the list of these Warner Brothers films. So if you want to watch it, you can. If you're in the US, you can go use HBO Max. But like, I just don't. It didn't really. It's a kids' film. It's not really marketed, but even for like someone who's grown up on Tom and Jerry cartoons, there's something weird about it. There's something I can't quite put my finger on that just doesn't sit right. Like, just the way it looks or the feel of it. It's cartoony, but not cartoony enough. It feels like they're trying to make it a little bit too realistic in some ways, and it doesn't quite blend right, you know?
They seem like they're the typical Tom and Jerry from the cartoons, like 2D versions, but they're in a 3D world.
Yeah, and they're kind of 3D. They're 3D, but they've got no 3D depth. But they're reacting to the world as if it's weird.
Yeah,
I don't know how people should watch this trailer more for the curiosity of this, not because it's going to be a good movie, but just to see what we're meaning. Because if you haven't seen it, check it out. Because once you see, you'll understand. It's really hard to describe. Like, but as soon as you see it, you'll go, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. There's something not right. It just doesn't fit.
Yeah, and they're still pulling out your typical Tom and Jerry tropes as well, of like, Jerry can move his little mouse hole across the floorboard or what have you, so Tom can't get in.
Which is fine. Those things I don't mind. They're sight gags. They work fine.
Yeah.
And if it works in 3D in real life, that's cool. That's no problem. It's just them as characters just don't work the way they're portraying them. I don't know how best to explain it, but kids will love it probably.
Yeah,
they'll laugh. The cat smacked into the wall.
Yeah, that's funny. Let's throw our cat in the wall. It's the same day, David.
God, jeez. Nobody else is going to get that.
No.
Only people from New Zealand.
I reckon Skip will get that.
Yeah, Skip will get that.
Skip, if you get that, well done, 10 points. Mario Puzo's The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone trailer.
The title is so ridiculous. The reviews, I read reviews about it. The trailer portrays like some of the changes and talks about like what the Godfather trilogy was as a trilogy. Obviously, the idea is to change. I think most of what I understand, the start of the movie and the flow of it is a lot different. And the movie's shorter as well, about 20-something minutes or half an hour.
Oh, wow.
But it says something about changing the ending, but what I heard is the ending hasn't really changed drastically. But I think that's to do with the fact that the ending was shot and edited the way the ending was intended. So, but I've heard good things. That, like as a recut of the movie, it is an improvement for people who've seen the original to give it a try. If you've this adds the interesting question to me because we've talked about this. So you've never seen the Godfather trilogy. You've seen bits of the first. You played the Godfather video
played
game.
The game twice on 2 different consoles.
But you haven't seen the second one and you haven't seen the third one. Now it asks me the question: if you were to sit down and watch the trilogy, should you watch the third one as it originally was cut, or should you watch this version, or should you watch both? And technically, then should you watch 4 Godfather films?
Well, see, now this is what you've got me in with Justice League, as you say, I should watch the Whedon one before the Snyder one comes out.
Yeah, but for me there's a difference there, because the idea is that you've got two different directors with two different intents, right? So with that, you would want to see both versions because they're going to be different because the director's different. But in this case, you're dealing with the same director and the same material. He's just re-edited it into a way where 20, 30 years later, he's revisited the material and saw how he would do it differently. And so it's necessarily a different layout of the story, but the beats, I suspect, from reading the reviews and what I remember of the third film, will be roughly the same. So the outcome, from what I expect, will be roughly the same. And so is this the improved version of that movie? Thus the idea of not even calling it Part 3, just the coda.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, is it now the replacement for the original, or should you still watch the original first so that you can then understand what the differences are and why this may even be an improvement? Because you actually might turn around and watch, like to me, you might turn around and watch that, and then you watch this and you go, yeah, what, I actually preferred the original cut more than this. You know, you might not, but you might, and it's hard to tell. But
I suppose in a way that's the same with like the 3 different versions of Close Encounters or Blade Runner.
Yeah, Blade Runner's got 4 or 5.
Yeah, it's like it's probably personal preference as well. Like, yes, one might be the definitive one of how the director wanted it, but it's also personal preference of what one you prefer.
Yeah, well, for Blade Runner, for example, there's the final cut, but yeah, there's like the director's cut was not really a director's cut; it was more of a studio cut. It's called the director's cut. And like there's work prints and all that sort of stuff, and yeah, Close Encounters is a bit different. I mean, I think it's just again the difference between that and the director's cut. Who then Spielberg turned around and was like, I probably shouldn't have shown as much inside the ship as it did.
Yeah,
it's like he had his regrets.
The studio wanted.
The studio wanted more material for re-release, which they got, and some of it's fine as an extra, but some of it isn't. You know, he had regrets about E.T. Changing the guns to cell phones, and then was like, that's not true to the original movie. I regret doing that. And outdoor versions afterwards have gone back to the original because that's just what it was at the time. I remember his justification was like, why were they were carrying guns to do with kids? Well, the reason they're not carrying the guns is not nothing to do with the kids, is because they don't trust the alien.
Yeah,
that's the reason. There's your answer. That's probably why you thought that it was fine to have the
you think the aliens kidnapping the kids.
Kids, so they got to do something. That's probably why. And to be fair, they're not pointing the guns at the kids or the aliens.
They've just got them for who knows what.
Well, they were potentially going to use them, but they just end up holding them up. Again, so is that right or wrong? No, it was just decisions that were made at the time, and I guess that's the same with this. The mindset that Coppola was in the late 80s compared to how he is now in 2020 is just two different mindsets, and the way he approaches it is very different. So be interested to see. You must add it to your list of trilogies to watch.
Add it to the list again.
A couple of documentaries. The first one to talk about. The first one was Baby God, which you had not heard about.
No.
It is an HBO documentary. It's already out in the States. It came out at the start of the month. It's about a fertility doctor, and he said he would help people with their fertility issues, and proceeded to impregnate numerous women with his own genes, basically for his own with his own children, and hundreds of them by the sounds of things. And in some cases, it sounds like it was misleading that he impregnated women who weren't even there for fertility treatments.
Yeah, there's that woman. Seems to be one woman who went in for like
surgery of some
surgery or some sort of sickness or something,
and they came out pregnant,
cured. So, I mean, like after we saw this, I was like, it kind of reminds me of the documentary we saw about
Three Identical Strangers.
Thank you, Three Identical Strangers. Yeah, and I was like, it kind of seems very similar. And
manipulation on a level that should not have gotten away with. Exactly.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting if it had like a similar outcome of how they sort of go back to the office, or the parents or something go to the office and
I suspect some people,
and then someone turns around or something.
I suspect at the end someone must have confronted him before it ended up in courts. And obviously, but the problem was by the time it looks like he went to court, he was quite old.
Yeah.
I'd be very interested to see it. I didn't know much about. I'd heard vaguely about the story in the past. I'd never really drawn much attention to it, but I had to read up about the situation after I saw the trailer, and I was like, wow, this will be a really good documentary. And no wonder they made it into what will probably be a really good documentary.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's definitely one to keep an eye out for.
Definitely. The other one, another HBO one, which is out very soon as well, is a Bee Gees one. It's called The Bee Gees, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? And I suggested this to you. And funnily enough, you think you may have actually seen some of this work.
I sort of sped through it for work.
not realizing it was a documentary. It looks like a really good chronicle, and I've read a few really positive reviews about it, which is what got my attention to begin with, some early reviews. And it chronicles not just of the obvious parts of their career that most people know, but the early parts of their career and their childhood, as well as like right through to now. And it has a combination of interviews, both archive and new, talks to numerous musicians about the legacy and impact of them, as well as people who've worked together in family units, like talking, which one, the Gallagher's, for example, is a perfect example.
I think they talked to one of the Jonas Brothers as well.
And one of the Jonas Brothers. So it, like, getting that idea about being in a band with your siblings is... maybe Hanson should have been on there too. Yeah,
or the Osmonds.
Osmonds, oh, good call. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if maybe they do tonight. I haven't seen it, so but yeah, definitely check the trailer, and if you can see it, for shilling 2 HBO movies in a row, but after our rant against what was going on, but
it's almost like we're being paid by HBO, but we're not.
Fast 10 the seatbelts.
We need to pitch something to HBO so they pay
fast
us.
10 the seatbelts for HBO.
That's Universal though. We can't.
I know, but I'm saying we need the equivalent for HBO. Come up an HBO tagline or something.
We need something.
Anyway, we'll move. HBO, it's where you'll see all your movies for the future. Chaos Walking, really troubled production. Trailer came out. It took you a while when you first saw it to realise who was actually in it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I think Tom Holland's pretty obvious.
Well, I think all of the male cast, but I just couldn't pick Daisy Ridley.
The one female in the trailer, because there's no women in this universe. Or on this planet where they are. It's based on a book, but as I was saying, there was a very troubled production. I think it was supposed to be out like 2 years ago, and then they had to go back and reshoot a bunch of stuff, and they had to wait for both Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley to be free from Spider-Man and Star Wars. So like it was, who knows what the outcome's going to be. That trailer is very slickly edited. It comes across with a very certain agenda, and from a young adult sci-fi kind of thing, it seems to speak pretty well. I think it will grab an audience based off that trailer, but whether or not the movie is any good, well, will be determined. It got a good solid cast. You'd think on paper it sounds like an interesting idea, and so hopefully it will be better than the situation surrounding its production, surmised. I'll leave you to talk about this because I saw it today and I was like, he's going to be so excited if he hasn't seen it already, and you hadn't. So
no, I hadn't.
You got to see it.
So it's probably the best trailer around that I've seen today. It's Cobra Kai Season 3 trailer. No? He's shaking his head. I probably shouldn't have done that.
Nothing's going to keep you down.
Yeah, no. It's definitely not. So if you haven't seen Cobra Kai...
we raved about it.
We've raved about it previously. Season 3, it looks to be amping up the stakes even more. It looks like Kreese is, I don't know, making an extreme Cobra Kai.
Taking almost like what his original intent was and making it even more crazy. And it looks like he's trying to recruit Robbie into the fold because he goes and visits him, which is crazy. And there's team ups and there's people in places where you wouldn't expect them to be, and shit's happening, crazy shit's happening already in the trailer. So and they reveal more about the thing that the little mystery with who was fighting Daniel in that dojo in Japan. So that's going to have a backstory. But I can't say anything because you haven't seen the sequels. So you need to... This is
I need to watch those as well.
Before these come out, we need to sit down.
In January, we do.
We need to sit down and watch 2 and 3 so you can kind of understand.
It also looks like Johnny and Daniel potentially team up against Kreese as well, but
which just
it looks like that might splinter out somehow.
I'm sure it'll work for a while, but then something's going to happen to pull it apart. It's the classic expectation to that, but we'll see how it goes.
Watch this space.
It's looking good, so we'll definitely be back to talk about that probably in February, I suspect.
I would say so. Well, is it going to be weekly episodic or is it all all at once? Do we not know?
I think it's all at once. I think.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. It could be doing weekly. We'll find out. I'm pretty sure it's all at once, but because they did the first 2 seasons like that because it was on YouTube. But they might do it weekly. I've just looked that up. Good question. We'll check it out. We'll either be back in February to talk about the first few episodes,
or we'll be back in March or April whenever
to talk about the whole thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Moving to the tail end of this episode, the reviews.
Yes, we've only got a few things to talk about. I'm going to start with a review of Freaky, which I saw while I was out of town, actually. I went and saw it at the cinemas. I was very lucky to go see it at the cinemas, obviously. I really loved it. I really thought it wasn't going to be that amazing. I had a free ticket, I have to admit, because obviously that makes it sound like I wasn't going to go, and that's the reason why I did go, but I'm glad I did, and I highly recommend it to anyone who gets a chance to either go to the cinemas and see it, or just download it properly and rent or buy, because it was honestly really good. On a surface level, it seems very straightforward. You've got, the general gist is there's a serial killer. He steals this ancient dagger, which happens to have a curse attached to it. He tries to kill someone with the dagger, but instead of it killing them, it just swaps them. It's a Freaky Friday kind of concept. And so the killer is now in the body of a girl, teenage girl, and the teenage girl is now in the body of the killer. Pretty straightforward, nothing amazing there. But the thing that gets it is that it's got the right level of humor, the right level of horror, the right acting in it. Like, Vince Vaughn is amazing. He does that thing we've talked about with Jumanji and stuff, where when they do it right, it's right, and he does it. He does the thing right. He gets the nuance of like a kind of a nebbish, nerdy, slightly insecure girl who now has this newfound power through the fact that she's inhabited some really tall, big guy's body, and pulls comedy out of it. And then on top of it, it's very true to the idea of a horror movie. Like, there's a serial killer, and the opening is pure classic styled Friday the 13th kind of. This guy's just relentless, storms around, kills a bunch of teenagers, like in crazy, weird, creative ways, and they even like do an homage to the whole thing, but they have their own version of it, and and I just was so chuckling away at that. Just the fact they just chucked that in there, no reason, just there because that's something that's funny. Why not? Exactly. And I was just like, okay, this is good. This is that like. The sincerity, the homage here to set up an expectation of the type of movie you're going to see, and I love that about when movies do that, because it means you can't get the expectation wrong. You know what you're in for, and if you think you're wanting too much, it's going to pull you back. And if you expected less, like I did, you'll be pleasantly surprised. So I recommend it. It's the same director and I think writer, or one of the writers from Happy Death Day, so definitely got that tone. And people have already joked about the fact that they should do a crossover. Which is ridiculous.
You might as well.
But you could. Like, they've got the options to do it. They could always do it. So, I recommend it. I won't say anything more. I suggest that if you get the chance to go see it, do it. You'll probably be very entertained.
There was one that I was shocked to find out was on our streaming service here, TVNZ On Demand.
Well, funnily enough, we're going back to HBO. It's an HBO thing in the States, isn't it? But it ended up on free here, which was... I was shocked. So, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reunion. I haven't seen this. I still need to. And so you're going to have to tell me all about it, because I'd seen the content I read online. I saw bits and pieces I saw on Twitter and stuff, but... It seemed like was it? I guess at the core, I know I'm kind of bearing the lead a little bit, I guess, right. But was it a good reunion special on a surface? Because that's the bit I don't know. Like, as an overall,
I reckon it was. I mean, like, we've heard stories from like Will Smith and Alfonso Ribeiro over the years that they get together like every Thanksgiving or every Christmas or whatever,
and catch up.
Probably the exception of this year, and catch up, which they've done since the series ended, I think, or. A couple of years after the series ended, or whatever it was, but I really enjoyed it. Like, I grew up watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like most people probably did grew up in the 90s, so
maybe even to the 2000s.
And
I mean, a lot on TV.
I really enjoyed it. Like, they had everybody was there, like all of the main cast, I should say. Like, even they had grown up Nicky, the kid that plays Nicky. He showed up for like all of 5 minutes. He just like randomly walks into set. They're all like, "Hey!" and all hugged and jeered, and he talked like a couple of things about his memories of it, and then he was just there for sort of the rest of it, and that was it. But
awkward.
They had a nice dedication to James Avery, Uncle Phil, of course, which I'm surprised it's been this long, but he died in 2013.
I know.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
Was it that long ago?
I know. It's crazy. Like, I remember being... Because he was another thing, he did a lot of his voice work. Yeah. I remember something that he'd done voice work the previous year and the show hadn't come out, ended up being dedicated to him. Now I'm trying to remember what it was. And that's the only reason I remember it. I knew it was around 2012, 2013. So because of that, and I can't remember what it is, but yeah, pretty crazy.
Yeah, I know, because like when it came up, it showed you like all the sort of best Uncle Phil bits, and it said James Avery, whatever year he was born, 2013. And I turned to Anne because we watched it together, and I was like, really? It's been 7 years. God, like it still only feels like a couple of years ago that it's like James Avery has died.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the big talking point was to do with the Aunt Viv situation.
Yeah, the two Aunt Vivs.
Two Aunt Vivs. And my understanding, looking at it from an online perspective, was actually I saw the Twitter stuff to do the back and forth.
Yeah.
Because people were sharing it. I don't follow. I don't think I have either of them followed on my Twitter, but people who I do follow were sharing it because obviously they were impressed by it. But there was some honest. Obviously, it was going to be some honest truth in the reunion, and obviously maybe even stuff that wasn't shown on camera that was spoken.
Yeah.
But the way it was portrayed, even by the people involved on Twitter, just came across as earnest and true. That a hatchet had been buried.
Yeah, absolutely.
A thing had been dropped, and they could finally move on with their lives instead of reportedly saying nasty things about the experience with each other. And if that comes across true on Twitter, I can only imagine what it was actually seeing that in the show.
Yeah, I definitely feel as though there probably was some legitimacy to both parties wanting to sort of bury the hatchet and sort of get back to, on speaking terms and more normal terms. But I kind of have this feeling in the back of my mind going, how much of that was just for the, for the camera, reunion, for the reunion sort of thing to appease people sort of thing.
Maybe, but then
you get what I mean? Like,
yeah, I get what you mean. Maybe it's also a case where like, sure, they're not gonna. It's not gonna be like with Alfonso and they're gonna hang out every freaking Thanksgiving or whatever.
Yeah.
But at least they'll be nice enough to each other, and when stuff comes up, no one will talk about it in the future. There's no need to.
No.
The past is in the past, and they've buried the hatchet on that level, and you don't need to bring it up anymore. It's just it happened. It's been dealt with, you know? And I think it's been more than 20 years.
Yeah,
you're talking almost 22 years. No, 25 years actually.
Yeah.
I think since she left the show. It's like 96, I think, 95
somewhere
or 96, somewhere in there. And it was only a few seasons in. I mean, there were some valid criticisms, and she's made them herself, and they're very true. And I don't know what was said in the thing, but my thing about the show was that the first couple of seasons the first 2 to 3 seasons were the better seasons.
Yeah.
And that's not because of the usual reasons that shows decline as they get better, but it became a little bit too self-aware and jokey, and then it would just throw, like, obviously the Nikki thing's a perfect example, but also there's an episode, like, there was the end of the season where Will goes back to Philadelphia, and they just, like, laughed it off at the start of the next season. Those
you have, like, NBC executives come back and show him his contract and go, it's the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, not Philadelphia.
Exactly, and this is like, so you've broken the fourth wall to make a point just because you didn't know how to write yourself out of this, rather than actually making it a dramatic point of view that Will returns to Philadelphia and realizes this isn't a good place for him to be.
Yeah.
They had a perfect opportunity to do a good story, and instead they just went, yeah. Or like another episode where Will makes a joke about like how the mansion's not that great because it's got a hole in the roof, and then
it's like, we're so rich, why can't we afford a ceiling?
Yeah,
exactly.
And the camera
just tilts up to see all the studio lights.
You're now breaking this wall, and the discussion about the Aunt Viv thing is interesting because as a character, Aunt Viv actually had a character in the original incarnation, and then when they replaced the actress, she was no longer a character anymore. She was just Aunt Viv who was there and occasionally said or did what the script required to surround the other characters.
Yeah.
She no longer seemed like a self, and this is no slight against the actress.
Yeah.
But it was the way she was written, the way she was performed afterwards became this thing where she was there, and when Uncle Phil got grumpy or did something wrong, she told him off.
Yeah.
And when Will needed some advice about something that Uncle Phil wasn't give, then she did it.
Yeah.
Or she was hard on the kids because the daughter's playing up, or one of the daughters is playing up, or Carlton's being a dick. Yeah. And she was just that thing. She was the foil. She no longer had any urgency of her own stories, where she did in the first incarnation. She actually had her own existence, and sometimes she did her own things and taught the kids the morals that later on were usually only given to Uncle Phil most of the time.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that would have happened anyway, because obviously part of it was that the kids got older, and the Will and Carlton moved out of the somewhat had moved out of the mansion to pool house mostly, but
pool
also
house.
college as well.
Well, yeah, that and the renovated house as
Yes,
well, because
yeah.
the house changed over a couple of seasons.
But it's just like it was one of those weird shows where it never really coalesced after the first couple of seasons. It kind of just went in its own direction, and like we talked about these weird fourth wall breaks. It's when it started to lose me. I don't mind fourth wall stuff, don't get me wrong, but it's didn't feel true to what the show had been up until that point, which was comedy, but with some gritty, like we talked about the idea of this reboot, that these stories, you can take them and you can definitely do it the way they did it and take it down a comedy route, but you could have taken some of those stories and taken them down a dramatic route, and they'd still be the same stories, and they'd just have depth. And once you start breaking the fourth wall and you start being goofy with it, the seriousness loses its edge.
Yeah.
But it's ironic that it's not those episodes that people remember so much. It's the serious ones. It's the one with
Will's father.
Exactly, perfect example. It's just like,
and they brought that up at the James Avery part,
of course,
as well,
because it's such an iconic episode. And I know that he taught, because Will was really worried about how that was going to be perceived and how he was going to act, essentially. He didn't know if he could pull it off. And I know Avery said something to him in his ear when they were hugging at the end, because it was because I've heard the story from Will Smith himself on his YouTube
he said
channel.
it multiple times. Yeah, he said, like, when they were hugging in that part, and I think the camera goes down to the statue, like, Avery's, like, whispering in his ear, he's like, no, that's fucking acting, or something to that effect.
Yeah. And I've heard Will talk about this before, and so I know these things. These are the reason why people remember these episodes, but they don't remember, well, they shouldn't, unless they're weirdos like me, remember when Will's looking up at the fucking empty ceiling, or when the executives turn up to Philadelphia and pull him back to the show.
Or talking about the Aunt Viv thing, when I think it's at this point the house has changed as well, but Jazz is in the house, and he looks at Aunt Viv and he goes, something looks different about you, Aunt Viv, and like breaks the fourth wall. Then
I'm okay with that when you have to cast someone for a reason, but like given the circumstances about why there was a recast, it's probably a little bit on the nose.
Yeah.
But well, I'm glad it was good. I should check it out because obviously I, much like you, grew up watching this a lot, and obviously I know a reasonable amount I remember from having seen the show and the repeats some bajillion times.
And I think one good thing about it too is that both Aunt Vivs had neither met each other.
Wow, of course
before, they'd never met, so they got to meet as well, so that was good.
You've got one more thing you want to talk about, and I haven't seen this either, but I will let you discuss it.
Yeah, so the final thing here is, we've mentioned it, or I've probably mentioned more on a previous episode of the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special.
No, not at all. What are you talking
about? Which got released was it this past week, I think?
Recently.
Or a week and a half ago.
Was it the end of November? November something?
Yes.
Time has passed, Ryan. It's already the 10th here, so we're 11th actually now. So
it got released a while ago anyway.
A few weeks.
Yeah. It was okay. You typical sort of, like, as far as Star Wars goes, it looks as though it's... What?
It was just so flippant. Well, yeah, it was okay. It was just a flippant response. Yeah, it was okay. Sorry.
I don't know. It was just... It's your typical sort of Lego Star Wars-y sort of movie, or your typical Lego sort of movie, but not like Lego movie, if that makes sense.
Well, was it a bit more, can I just ask, was it a bit more akin to the Lego video games kind of sensibilities of humour in the cutscenes? I mean, not so much the gameplay, obviously.
Not really. It was just like all of the little Lego Star Wars shorts that you find on like Disney Plus.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it's more like those, like the Freemaker Chronicles.
Yeah,
or whatever, those sort
a little
of
bit
things.
silly, a little bit goofy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I think I mentioned in the previous episode as well, but it touches on like Life Day, which from the original Star Wars Holiday Special, which is why everyone goes to Kashyyyk and meets Chewbacca's wife and child, who show up in this as well. Like they show up.
So that's canon again now.
Yeah. Yeah, so the whole thing surrounds Life Day, and everyone's got to get like food ready for it and all that jazz.
I have one question. Yep. Did they have a celebrity guest on the level of we talked about this last episode? Was it B. Arthur?
No, they didn't. No.
Why wouldn't you put Betty White in there?
No, they did not.
Oh, missed opportunity.
There's no celebrity cameo that I'm aware of. I mean, there could have been a mystery voice that was a celebrity,
but nothing. No one playing.
It's not on IMDb that I'm aware of that I've seen.
Boo! I say to you, boo, creators! You missed an opportunity there.
Yes.
Boo.
So it basically seems as though it takes place after Rise of Skywalker, because Rey is training Finn with her yellow lightsaber, So it definitely seems to be somewhat canon, I would imagine.
As loose as these things
as loosely as canon as you want to make it. But
maybe Lego Star Wars has its own continuity.
It's possible, yeah. So she's going through like Rey's going through all these manuals, like trying to figure out how to train Finn because he's just not really getting it. And she's read all these books before.
Racist.
How is that racist? You just made that racist. There was no racial tones to that at all.
You're saying that he wasn't. He was force sensitive, and yet you're telling him he can't train with lightsabers. He was a force sensitive character in the Star Wars movies, and they made him like the bumbling idiot.
Yeah, but you've got to take this into effect. If he is force sensitive and can be a Jedi, then he can only be trained like very little because Rey's only not long learned all this as well.
I know, but they made him like the bumbling idiot, obviously, for the sake of the story.
I guess so, because I mean he does slice up a training remote in half, which Rey has to put back together, and then she gives him a wooden lightsaber to practice with.
Here you go, dummy.
Yeah, it's basically it.
So yeah, maybe a little bit not on. I'm not saying they were intending to be racist, but it comes off a little bit racist. Let's be honest. Hey, dum-dum.
Yeah.
Take your wooden lightsaber, dummy.
Anyway.
Sorry.
So Rey goes through all these books, and she sort of sits in the corner of the Falcon and sort of sulks, but a book jumps off the shelf.
Of course,
forcefully.
That's what
and it's open on a specific page, and it tells her to go to a specific planet on the specific time, and it just happens to be, that time, which is Life Day. And she's got to go to this planet and get a mystery. Yeah. She's got to get like this mystery crystal, which takes her sort of back through time to all the different times. Like she sees Luke blow up the X-Wing. She sees...
Death Star.
Yes.
That's
the one, yeah. She sees Luke blow up the Death Star with his X-Wing. Yep. There we go.
Correction. Yep.
Thank you.
It's all right.
It's late at night at the moment.
It is. It's getting late.
And then she sees Yoda training Luke on Dagobah as well.
Yeah. With his X-Wing.
No, well, that's in the swamp, but yes.
Sorry,
she does see that. And she sort of realizes that, it just takes sort of patience of how to train Finn and all that sort of thing. So she eventually gets back there and
she can go, hey, dum-dum, we can take your wooden lightsaber.
Yeah. But in doing so, she inadvertently comes across Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine on the second Death Star.
Yeah.
And then her little portal hole that she goes through to travel through time stays open, and Darth Vader follows her, and then they sort of battle around and trying to get the crystal and control of that and not screwing up things.
But only somehow really screwing it up even more.
Well, it's not like they really screw up a timeline as such. It seems to be like it's pretty foolproof. They can go through time, but they don't screw anything up.
Because it's a Lego movie.
Yeah, because they go back to like Tatooine from A New Hope, and you see Luke, and you see stuff all falling out. So you see like X-Wings and Y-Wings and people and all that, stuff. And you see an old Han and a young Han both shoot Greedo. So
that was a good gag.
Yeah,
I like that in the trailer.
But yeah, so she ends up getting back to whatever planet they're on, and they end up having Life Day, and it's all works out.
Oh, fabulous.
So it's just a typical sort of, throw it on for the kids. Anyway, I think we should leave it there. We've gone on and tangented enough for this episode.
We have, as per usual. I think it's going to end up being about the same as the last couple of episodes, which isn't that bad.
No.
It's just what it is, especially when we go on these random tangents. And we went on a lot of tangents last time. Thank you for sticking with us, as always.
Still here.
If you're still here.
Yeah, let us know if we go too long and you want our episodes to be shorter.
Yeah, or
I'm sure we could cut
or
them
if you
down.
love the tangents, you might be like, the tangents are the thing that makes you different.
Yeah,
and we love it.
If you're just here for the tangents, good on you.
Yeah, thank you.
But if you think their episodes are too long and we should cut them down, let us know.
Yeah, we'll stop tangenting, or we'll tangent on minimal topics rather than all the topics.
Yeah.
As always, like, share, subscribe, blah, blah, blah.
All that jazz.
All that lucky stuff that everyone loves. We appreciate all your support and listening over the last couple of years so far. It's been amazing. I can't believe we've been doing this for 2 years now. This is unbelievable. And you thought we'd get past 2 episodes.
No.
2 years. We are thinking about trying to put together a end of year special like we did last year. Hopefully put up in January, and then we'll be back for episode 23.
Yep.
We've actually, while we haven't quite averaged 24 episodes in 2 years. We've actually averaged an episode a month for the time, though.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
I think we're one from actual episodes where we're one behind, but at this point we're already at 24 eps, including our specials. So we've done really
pretty
well.
good.
I'm quite happy with that. It's an average of one a month. So thank you for all those who've stuck with us right through. And if you've joined us just recently, thank you for listening. And hopefully you can go back and listen to us ramble and go on weird tangents about some other stuff.
Yeah, and hear us grow over that time, because I think the first few episodes we had no idea what the hell we were doing.
No, not at all.
I think at this point we probably still don't know what we're doing, but we've got a better grasp of it.
We've got a bit of grasp of the fact that we don't know what we're doing. Yeah, I get that. I agree with that.
Yeah. But somehow we still make a couple of hours of content for you and your oral listening.
You were about to say listening pleasure when your oral listening pleasure? Or you going to say it sounded like
I don't know. Well, yeah, whatever you want it to be. Whether you want it to be an oral listening pleasure, whatever.
All right, we're already going on a tangent on the tangents. This is ridiculous.
We are.
All right, we'll catch you next time. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you for the end of year special and episode 23.
See you.